gas. Into the final 200 metres. The chase has begun. What a sprint, never seen this before. Yes! Absolutely fabulous.
The Hammer Cycling Series. 3 disciplines: climb, sprint, chase. Team versus team, no individual ranking. Each team has 7 riders. 5 riders are picked to race and score team points for each discipline. All 3 disciplines are raced on short circuit loops with points to grab on the first 2 disciplines. The climb. An 8.48 kilometre circuit with challenging gradients, 9.5 laps, 10 chances to score points. For every lap, the first 10 riders to cross the finish line score team points. On laps 3, 6 and 10, it's double points. Each rider must make it into the last lap for his points to count. The team with the most points wins the climb discipline. The sprint, a 9.3 kilometre circuit. 10 laps, 10 chances to score points. Same rules as for the climb. And again, laps 3, 6 and 10 earn double points. The final discipline is the chase. A fox and hound team chase raced over 3 laps on a 16.23 kilometre circuit. The best ranked team after 2 days starts in first position. They are chased. All the other teams try to catch Team 1, starting the chase on fixed predefined time gaps depending on the accumulated ranking of the first 2 disciplines. The team whose 4th rider crosses the finish line first wins Hammer Stavanger.
The sun is shining once again on Norway's Rogaland County, and the riders completing their preparations here in Stavanger. It's sure to be a speedy start to the day. Well, there's the team's lineup with Team Sky, the #1 registered squad, of course, courtesy of their victory in Hammer Series, the opening round in Limburg last year. Scrolling down through the lists, I think Quickstep are a team to watch out for today. They've got some excellent opportunities and a couple of very impressive sprinters. Well, teams are getting the hang of Hammer Series racing. Let's remind ourselves now of the hectic start to the weekend that we had in yesterday's Hammer Climb. Well, the riders had the pleasant promenade from Stavanger down to Sandnes, the neighbouring town, for the beginning of what was a grippy start to the day. And, well, Michael Gugel got his way out front in the early stages. Team Sky scoring well at the first sprint of the day, but we're going to have a radical change as it worked through the day. They had 10 climbs in total. A grippy one indeed, with Michael Albacini of the Mitchelton Scott squad and Antoine Tolhoek of the Lotto NL Jumbo team, stretching clear to take lap 4, and they were out front for quite a considerable chunk of the afternoon. Both of those riders contributing the maximum and the majority of their team's points. It was an extremely worthwhile effort from Michael Albacini. But coming to the conclusion of the event, no doubt about the winners, Mitchell and Scott. Søren Kragh Andersen was the one who took the final sprint, and those double points on offer at the final climb, elevating Team Sunweb into an improbable but a very impressive second place on the day. Mitchell and Scott scoring well, 4 of their riders managing to contribute to the total. Albacini, though, very much the man who led the team to the champagne spray at the conclusion of Hammer Climb. Well, it's Mitchell and Scott that dominated yesterday, more than double the advantage of the nearest next best team. Team Sunweb vaulting up into second. Team Lotto NL Jumbo, Antoine Tulloch did a great job for them. Sky just about holding off Quickstep at the back end ahead of BMC and Lotto Soudal. Scrolling down through the order, it was the Pro Continental outfit, Nippo Vini Fantini putting it up to the likes of Trek Segafredo. UAE with a chastening day for Alexander Kristoff. Gahar Rural, Israel Cycling Academy. Aqua Blue and EF Education first. Drapic, powered by Canada, have work to do today.
You said it, there's plenty of teams with a lot of work to do today.
Yeah, certainly do, Robbie. It's a lot of squads will be thinking about how they're going to make their way back in. Well, the teams have, they're starting to get the hang of this Hammer Series racing. We've caught up with some of the leading lights to get their thoughts on what's been a frenetic opening stanza and what we can expect in today's sprint action.
How much has that taken out of you going into tomorrow, or do you get a rest?
No, I'm going home. That's why I left all out there today, getting as many points as possible. Because after this is coming sprint and TT stuff, I left it for the quick guys, and I have a rest. So it was all out today for me, and worked out well.
Quite a hard loop with the climb and the downhill. You don't have really much recuperation.
The big effort together with Michael Albacini.
Yeah, we just went full gas and we didn't speak a lot. So I tried to give it a shot here, and it went good. So.
Antoine Tulloch did a great job. Also Duncan got some points, but Tulloch got I think 600 points or more. So he did a really great job. I think the road of the race suited him really good yesterday. So we were happy with that for sure. Yeah.
We were a little bit behind, but we did a good team effort, and our plan went good in the end to keep some power for the end, and we took back a lot of points. So nice to do that for the team, and yeah, I was happy about my feeling. I could feel that my training is working, so that's what I take with me from yesterday. Yeah.
None of your top sprinters are here, no Grønnevæggen, no Van Poppel. Does that mean a lot of responsibility for you today?
Yeah, I think we have 3 guys, Pascal Eekhoorn, Tom Lezer and me. We didn't have points yesterday, so we have to try today for sure, and we are a little bit quicker than the other guys, so for sure we need to collect the points today. Yeah.
I think for me it will be the best the second day in Stavanger for getting the points in the more flatter stage. So it's a great feeling to race in hometown. You have a lot of extra fans and a lot of people that you know personally, not just fans. So it's a special feeling, and I feel usually I can go a little bit deeper. I managed to do a little bit more in home, so I hope that also counts for now.
Well, Alexander Kristoff is going to have to go very deep indeed if he's going to hold the UAE team back into contention. He's got work to do today. The top squad in action today, defending that lead. Mitchelton Scott have great options with Daryl Impey and Cameron Meyer, multi-world points race champion. Daryl Impey's a handy sprinter and a rider who can certainly do a job for them at the finish line each lap. Roger Kluge is going to stretch it thin and provide the launching pad for their sprinters as well. Damien Howson and Lucas Hamilton, with Michael Albacini getting a pass.
Well, Team Sunweb, for mine, they're the ones with the most horsepower and probably the favourites on paper. And Phil Bauhaus, a very accomplished young sprinter, the German. They'll be assisted by one of the heroes of yesterday, Simon Geschke, the man with the beard, a great ride yesterday. Also Kragh Andersen crossed the line first at the end, pick up the double points. Storer, and along with them, Edward Turns, another good sprinter, the Belgian.
Team Lotto and El Jumbo in a handy third place after day one. Lars Bohm is capable of this kind of racing. Former world cyclocross champion Tom Laser is a man to do a little bit of sprinting for them too. And the others will try and keep them honest and keep them up towards the front as each and every lap goes around. So the fourth team, of course, is Team Sky. They've got some great sprinting talent.
Yeah, Team Sky have made a couple of replacements since yesterday, so brought in the sprinters, and most notably, number 5, Christopher Halvorsen. So Basso, Golas and Moscon all riding yesterday, but Halvorsen will be joined in the sprints by Christopher Lawless. So those two riders coming in fresh, they'll be looking to pick up the points and haul Team Sky back towards the top of the leaderboard with their eye on tomorrow's Hammer Chase.
Well, local hero Alexander Kristoff grew up training on these roads. We feel he'll certainly approve of the parkour that's been mapped out for the riders today. Let's take a look at what they've got after the climbing yesterday. It's a relatively flat, not entirely flat course, and plenty of opportunities for the spectators to see the riders. 9.2 kilometers in total and lots of straight roads. The first couple of kilometers taking the riders into the center of Stavanger, the center of the Norwegian oil industry, a very prosperous part of the world, and who's going to prosper on this circuit. In or around the sinuous harbour front, it's well known to riders in the Tour de Fjords over the years. And then they head back out of town, back out along the same road. So the riders who form a breakaway, they'll be very much in vision for the other riders in the bunch. Through the line, going in the opposite direction, round the roundabout, 180 with about 800 meters to take the riders back across the line. They'll have to do it another 9 times. .2 kilometers in total for the riders, 92 kilometers of racing. The teams are refining their tactics ahead of day 2 of Hammer Stavanger, and we've secured a spot inside the Team Sunweb and Mitchelton Scott team buses to eavesdrop on their plans from the afternoon.
Welcome to Stavanger.
With the energy and all the game plan that we had yesterday, we also can believe will work today, meaning we try to score some easy points in the beginning, first half, and then in the second half, we try to see if we can do like yesterday, going all in for making good points, also on the double point laps. So Phil is sprinting on his own, you are also sprinting when you have a chance, and then it's really important that we also go for the breakaways. Søren and Eddie and Simoni, and also you, Michael, take care of the breakaways, join them as good as possible.
What you said before, running in the top 10 those first few sprints, I think that would be a good job for you, Roger. If you're inside the top 10, because that could split after a sprint.
Yeah.
And if
I mean, this climb is actually it's similar to yesterday. 800 meters 6%, now 800 meters 5%. Not the whole climb, but the final one probably.
But you might drag into it a bit faster, I think.
But
you probably get 300 meters for free.
If there's a big push for the 6th lap double points, there's an opportunity to go on with it after that.
I want to see how the race goes the first.
Yeah, but that's what we're saying. Don't.
When everybody's cracking the second
points,
half,
just,
then
I'm for sure. Like Sunweb did yesterday, put 4 in the last group for 2 laps, and you go from 6th to 2nd.
I mean, you guys have to see how you feel in the beginning after yesterday.
Well, we bring you to the heart of the action here at the Hammer Series. We're on board with Aqua Blue Sport Team EF Education first. Lotto Sudal and Trek Segafredos in those 4 team cars this afternoon. Charlie Wigelius preparing in the EF Education first car. Bob Knotter there for Aqua Blue, Kim Anderson and Mario Ertz for Trek and Lotto Sudal respectively. And we're on board as well. We've got several bikes in the peloton today. Oliveira Troya for Team UAE, got Phil Bauhaus from Team Sunweb, and Moreno Hofland will be sprinting for Lotto Sudal. And he'll be hoping that there aren't too many bikes in vision on that one. Well, the riders are getting set to roll out for their 92 kilometres of racing very shortly, and Robbie, it's a proper warm-up. It really is absolutely critical for this event.
It is. There's such short and punchy stages, and you can't afford to miss the start because points every lap and then double points on 3 of those laps. You've really got to be amongst it right from the get-go, and we heard in those team meetings, team directors saying, let's make sure we're clipping off some points early on, maybe even slipping into a breakaway. So riders have got to be ready to get amongst it straight away. And as they leave the start line, they're under neutral race conditions at the moment behind the race director's car. As soon as he pulls that flag in, Declan, I expect someone's going to be prepared to have a go. We saw that yesterday. It was really on for young and old right from the get-go.
Yeah, I don't think there's going to be a lot of paint left on the bumper of that car by the time the flag comes in any moment. Now, a quick reminder, it's hashtag Hammer Series, so please do get involved and join the conversation as Hammer Series Day 2. Hammer Stavanger is getting set to get underway. The car will pull in just as soon as it's secure and understanding that the riders are ready to go. So that's about as short a neutralized section as these guys are used to. So plenty of riders that have been up on the rollers, and immediately we've got Sunweb on the attack.
It looks like Edward Turns. I saw the bandaged arm, and we noticed that yesterday from a fall last week. So Turns, the Belgian, he was told to also try and get into one of the breakaways. He's a sprinter, but he's quite good at this situation in races. He's grown up racing in Belgium, the Kermis races, always very aggressive, and he's the man to go straight away out of the start.
Interesting play. It's not the traditional fare, though, is it? If you've got a sprinter, you normally protect him and try and present him into a perfect situation for the finish line. But you think that a group, or at least they think perhaps, that a group is going to go away early?
Well, it's always possible. It's better to be in it than have to chase it. So that's the really important thing in the Hammer Series, is to be on the front foot. We said it so many times yesterday. You can't afford to offer up a lot of guys. There are only 5-man teams in these Hammer races. So you see a lot of chasing being done from behind. And right in the background there, peloton spread right across the road. So a big early move going away.
Well, this,
and this panic stations for anyone who's missed the boat.
Edward Grosse's got in there as well for Nippo Vini Fantini. He's a pretty handy finisher as well, not an A-list sprinter, but one of those guys who's got a punchy sprint finish and will fancy his chances if he gets into a small group of mopping up some points from the Nippo Vini Fantini team. Classified 8th after day 1 of Hammer Stavanger. At the front of the race, Israel Cycling Academy also putting a rider in there. They've got Sondre Holstanger back on duty after his Travails, of course, crashed on day 2 of Tour de Fjord. So given a pass on the first day of the Hammer climb wouldn't have suited him anyhow. The local hero in to do a job as well. And it was a tough day out for them yesterday, so who knows, they might be able to come up with, and it's plenty of splits, isn't it? It's no free ride in there at the moment.
No, well, it is called the Hammer Sprint, but at the moment it's more like the Hammer Attack. Getting up the road, these are possibly riders who don't really rate their chances of being in the top 10 if it comes to a full bunch sprint, so do what they can, get up the road, try and nip some points away. Roger Kluge is the large man there in 2nd position in the black and yellow.
Well, funny, we heard the team meeting, and the team meeting was suggesting that Kluge was just going to watch and wait for 3 or 4 laps and then maybe try and get in one. So I wonder if they didn't change the tactics a little bit between meeting 1 and what we're seeing out on course now. The road will decide, so maybe he just felt it was a nice one to slip into.
Well, maybe the team with the camera there in the bus, maybe they're trying to let us take the bait and feed us some false information. But I think in the Hammer Series, you've really got to ride the race that's presented to you. You can't come up with a tactic and just stick to it. You've got to not only have a plan A, you've got to have a plan B, C, D and E, etc. all the way through. And then maybe some numbers as well after that when you run out of alphabet letters.
It's tough to legislate for every situation. You've just got to understand and feel what's happening and then ride the race you're in. Well, Team BMC trying to protect a position. It was a difficult afternoon for them yesterday, really, for the BMC squad. Slipped a little bit down the order after a pretty good start. And indeed, they had plenty of riders. They had 4 riders scoring, but still slipped to 6th position. So the value of having a rider up the road and scoring consistently seems to have been the order of the day in the Hammer climb. So BMC looking to protect control, try and knit this one back together again. Looks like that's been successful. But the main peloton just winding their way through the streets of Stavanger now.
Also ample opportunity before the first sprint to get a breakaway formed off the front. The 9.2 kilometre lap. So plenty of road to use to get away, and the gap is opening up. They're looking over the shoulders. I I think it's Kunda Court from Trek Segafredo in the red colours. Third position on the right-hand side. Is this Lars Bohm, who's also managed to join the break, because you would expect the former cyclocross world champion, a fast start would be his specialty. And looks like he's been able to infiltrate that break.
Cyclocrossing is pretty much an hour with your heart in your mouth, isn't it? And so being able to get that hole shot, be right on it right from the get-go is an art. It's a skill, it's a talent, and not everyone has it. But Lars Bohm certainly has it in spades. Former Dutch road race champion as well, 32 years of age. He's had an interesting experience in Norway so far. He did Tour of Norway, then Tour de Fjords, and into the Hammer Stavanger, and managed to get himself eliminated by the Commissars from the Tour of Norway, somewhat controversially. Had a little bit of a contretemps with Brabant van Hecke, the former Belgian road race champion, and well, they kissed and made up pretty quickly, but the Commissars saw something different and decided they were going to eliminate him from the race. But Lars Bohm, fully contrite, back into action in Fjords, now into racing, down by the harbour front. It's absolutely beautiful down here. There's all sorts of footprints and handprints from Nobel Prize laureates just down to the right-hand side, and they'll make their way up. And at the 4-kilometre point of this circuit, there's a little bit of a gripper, which could play a bit of a role. It's substantially a flat circuit, but 4.5 kilometres in, we've got 800 metres at just under 5%.
They're just about to hit that now. They've just come away from the harbour, and you have to kick up back through the city centre. And that lake there, that is right in the heart of the city. And from that lake, it is all uphill to get out back towards our position here at the finish line. And you can see the riders now. That is really quite steep, that little section they've come up. Almost about halfway through that. And it's not just all smooth city streets either. There's a number of small cobbled sections. So there's a little bit of everything for everyone. But of course, it will be all about who has the fastest legs when they get back here to the finish time the first time.
It's the Hammer Sprint. How much of a role is that little drag going to play?
I think that is really going to become a springboard later in the race for potential breakaways if they can catch this group, because they've really stolen a march very early on. There's the peloton in the background. The gap is around 150 to 200 metres. And on that hill, I would say that gap must be around the 20 to 25 seconds. As we get a beautiful shot of one of these cruise liners. They're in and out of here.
Is that your boat, Robbie?
That's my dinghy.
That's your spare one,
That's the small boat. That's the one I tow behind my boat.
Well, you've got quite a lot of guests here this weekend at Hammer Stavanger. 87 kilometres remaining. It's a handy little group. A lot of teams involved in here. And I wonder, as we see Roger Kluge just skipping across to it, Lars Bohm wants to press on. A little bit concerned there for a moment that they weren't really gelling just as well as they might do. But since I think that there's just that many teams in there, that this one might have some legs.
Well, let's see. There are certainly some anxious riders here. Kunda Court coming through to the front turns, doing a lot of work. Also Lars Bohm, so they're really intent on getting this group away. And I thought we might have also caught the colours there of Sepp van Marken from EF Drapac.
We're on board with Olivero Troya of the Team UAE squad, who's pressing on with some vigour. And just sitting on the back of Eddie Tuns there. Tuns, the man who was most excited to get this one set up, and Troya is going to take his turn at the front. So Troya is doing a job for Alexander Kristoff. He's a big unit. He won't be afraid of this kind of racing, as you mentioned. It's very much like Kermesse-style racing, absolutely flat chat from the get-go. How much will the teams be interested in the idea of having one rider up the road? If he's not the right rider, you know, are they going to chase?
Well, I think at the moment they'll be happy to have at least one rider up there. It's not your typical sort of race where you say, well, maybe he's not the fastest of the group to win the race. This is quite different. There's just so many sprints, and you can, of course, get out and take the points by breaking away from the group that you're with. So as long as you've got a strong rider up the road that you think you can rely on, a classic style rider could do very well in this. Even a track rider who can hold his own because of the multiple sprints. Cameron Meyer type, a Roger Kluge, a very good points race and 6-day riders. At the moment, BMC are trying to get a man across because they look to be the team, the highest profile team, that's missed the move.
Yeah, job to do for the BMC squad. So too for Aqua Blue Sport is this Archbold that's just trying to clip across, and he's finding himself in no man's land. It's not an ideal situation. It's a narrow advantage, though. Just 12 seconds they're showing between the peloton and this group up front, who are stepping clear and clearly mean business this afternoon, as there's what, 1, 2, 3, 4, there's probably 8 or 10 teams in there. We'll run the rule over, get the full count very shortly, but EF Education First will be absolutely thrilled to have infiltrated this move, because it was a tough afternoon yesterday. Just Brendan Canty scoring for them. He's been given the day off. He may well be back in action tomorrow. Andy Breschel could be a rider to do a job for them with his decent effort and his decent ability in the sprint. So we're heading down towards the finishing area, just opposite the finish line here, and opposite our commentary position as the large bunch in pursuit. Still a narrow and by no means decisive advantage. And what's going to be interesting is that Archibald is reabsorbed by the peloton, is what happens after the sprint. Will there be an interest to persevere? And I think Bohm is interesting in the way he's absolutely flat out. He's not even thinking about the sprint right now.
Yeah, Bohm has not missed a single turn. He's been swinging in mid-group quite often and just making sure this group keeps rolling on. Kunda Court the same. Roger Kluge now making an appearance at the front. The black jersey with the yellow shoulders. Back in the peloton along with BMC. Another team that's missed the move is Lotto Soudal. They were very well represented yesterday by Björg Lambrecht on the Hammer climb. Today they've missed the move and they are chasing. So they would have been told in no uncertain terms by Mario Arts, the team director, get us back up there, bring this group back as they make the U-turn with about 1 kilometre to go until the first sprint.
Inside 800 metres remaining to the first sprint of the afternoon. We've got double points a little bit later on. Keep an eye out for that. The bunch behind just at a remove of 8 seconds now, so it really is nip and tuck here. Magnusson on the back is the Swedish champion with the EF Education First. They've got 2 riders in here, and I believe they're the only team that have 2 representatives in this move. So plenty of interest here for William Clark and indeed for Magnusson. His Swedish teammate is just behind, and Clark slips to the back of the group. They're finessing here, and I'm not sure they really have the position. They've established their move, so most of these riders are going to score. Lars Bohm, I think, recognises that fact. He wants to keep the pressure on and try and keep them running all the way to the line. Edwin Avila is a very, very handy sprinter. See him loitering at the back here. Watch for Avila for Israel Cycling Academy. He's certainly going to contest. It's a long way from the back to the front. He'll do well to find a way through. Edwin Avila isn't surely going to manage it. It's going to be a decent haul of points across the line. Surely, oh, looks like Grossu might just get there.
Edward Turns.
Turns that gets it ahead of Grossu and Basso with Troy de Court, Avila, Clark, Kluge, Bohm and Magnusson also scoring. So good all the points for Edward Turns of Team Sunweb. Team Sunweb take the early advantage. Those riders out front still hanging on to their lead. It doesn't seem to be too much impetus from the peloton, Robbie.
No, well, it doesn't seem like a lot of impetus, but it's quite a wide, just flat road that doesn't give you a good impression of how fast they're moving. But the gap really not opening up just yet, so Lotto Soudal not giving up the chase. We just see them hit the line and a clear victory there for Edward Turns.
Different style of racing. I don't think we're talking about early breaks here, but at the moment the early move, such as it is, has scooped and garnered the important points, and Edward Turns justifying his status as one of the strongest sprinters in this race, just about holding off Grossu, who's a handy galloper in his own right. Diminutive Romanian just getting up for second on that occasion. Avila here at the back of the group.
Basso's done a very good sprint there, the Italian for Team Sky, coming across in third. And in fact, it's Will Clark from Education First Drapac. So quite similar in look on the bike to that of Sepp van Mark. But Will Clark, the Tasmanian from Australia, has made the move. And Edward Turns, well, he's just continuing on with how they finished yesterday, with Soren Krag Andersen taking double points on the final lap. And Turns, he's making sure they are staying up there so far. First man to attack today, and takes the first sprint as well.
He got points out of it as well. It wasn't just one of those futile gestures just to get your name on race radio. This one was for real. Lars Bohm at the back here was towards the back of the top 10 scores. Did hoover up some points. He was in the, well, about 9th. And Lars Bohm 32-year-old Dutchman. He's a canny rider because he's done a lot to provide the narrative, isn't he? He's telling the others we need to ride in order to make it succeed. The time gap is absolutely tiny at the moment. So Lars Bowman, in a way, kind of sacrificed that one for the potential to stay out front for longer.
Yeah, he was working really hard. He was playing the long game. So he wasn't just interested in taking the first sprint, but now it's Quick-Step who have come to the front of the peloton, also having missed that move. So BMC, Lotto Soudal, and now Quick-Step, they've all taken a turn in doing the lion's share of the chasing. And Quick-Step, spoke to a couple of the riders this morning. I went out for a ride myself, and I came across James Knox, along with Martinelli, and also Tim de Klerk, and pretty much riding with the same team as they rode yesterday. So no one really getting a rest, just one change for them, which is Fabio Jakobsen, of course, and he's the man who showed some really good speed. In fact, he did ride yesterday. It's Asgreen who hasn't started today. So they'll be relying on Jakobsen to get around and get some points, but first they need to get him back to the front of the race.
Well, Grossu's absolutely hanging out of this one. He sprinted well and he wants to keep going, but I'm not sure they're going to last because it looks like the bunch are gravitating behind. It's showing it no seconds whatsoever. It's a little bit of an advantage, but look at the way that the Quick-Step-led peloton, Sky just policing that one. They've got Basso up front and sprinting well through the first haul of points. Whether they will be satisfied with that. They've got Lawless behind. They've got Christopher Halverson, the local man, who's a very fast finisher and fast through all the finishes through this race. Will Sky back Basso to get them enough points out of this, or are they going to ride with Quick-Step?
No, well, I think now Quick-Step have actually shut the gap. You see just in the back of picture, they've already picked up Edward Turns. He knew how late it was. He said, well, I've done what I could on this first lap, got the maximum out of it. He sat up, and there is the peloton in the background. So it looks like this group will be mopped up as they make their way around the harbour front here in Stavanger. Lars Bohm, he's not ready to give up, though.
Has a little look around as he comes off the front. Trek Segafredo, represented by Koen de Kurt, the 35-year-old. He's super experienced rider. He also took part in the climb yesterday, so he's managed to coax those legs back into action. And how important is it for the teams to manage their riders' energy resources throughout the 3 days?
Well, it is very important to use the right guys at the right time, but I think a big advantage is if you can get someone to score points when you least expect it. One of the climbers who can slip into a move on the Hammer Sprint, or one of the sprinters who has managed to get away in a little group yesterday in the Hammer Climb and really contribute to the team and make the difference between being 6th and being 3rd, for example. But I was just going to say, I think we're about to find out how significant this hill will be as they come out of the city centre, as everything is just now coming back together. That could provide a real springboard for the next attack.
It's all back together again, so now we have a reset, and where's the next attack going to come from? How many of those riders are just going to try and lurk in there and hope nothing steps off the front? Well, it's Quick-Step finding it with de Klerk, indeed, finding themselves on the back foot. They did the lion's share of the chasing, and you'd know that Tim de Klerk was one of those riders doing the chasing, but he's got the strength to go again, set up a little bit of attack, and it's easier to have them chase you than you to be doing the chasing, as you said.
Exactly, and Tim de Klerk, such a strong rider, and he was one of the guys I saw out on the road this morning. He was just stretching the legs, getting them warmed up for today. He had a normalised power for the 2 hours yesterday of 391 watts. For those people who are into their wattages and their figures, those who aren't, I can just tell you, that is enormous. That is a massive effort. They're now on the hill, and there's an attack coming from the Sunweb team.
Someone putting riders into everything at the moment. BMC caught out the last time, have managed to infiltrate this one. Could be Kung, I think, that's trying to try his luck off the front, and it's a grippy little one, and it's going to cost them, I think, as they race through the full 10 laps.
Yeah, that is Kung on the front, and I think the man who lit it up there was Anderson, the man that we saw finish off so well yesterday in the Hammer Climb. And look at the back of this group, the man who's followed the move, Alexander Christoph, the local rider. A lot of support for him here today. He's making sure he's not getting caught out. Christoph.
European Road Race champion Alexander Christoph has infiltrated the move. He's the local man. It's hashtag Hammer Series. If you want to join the conversation this afternoon, here comes Christoph from the back, and he's hauling that big frame into action. He is a unit. When he gets going, he can charge to the line. There are very few that can hold him off. But well, in this instance, they haven't managed to detach themselves from the peloton. But Søren Kragh Andersen is a rider who knows these roads well as well. The Danish rider has competed quite a bit in Norway. And he's indeed won a stage, Sandnes to Stavanger, in the Tour de Fjords a couple of years ago. So it's been a happy hunting ground for him in the past.
Well, Declan, I'm seeing a few splits opening up here. So it's quite a large group at the front behind Alexander Kristoff and Stefan Kung, along with Anderson. But just behind them, you saw a lot of riders scrambling, trying to get across that gap, join that front group. And quite a gap starting to open up. So that hill has proved that it's going to make a difference throughout this Hammer Sprint. Whether it be now or later on, it's only going to get harder and harder, just like yesterday's climb did. And so many efforts and really intense efforts to be made so quickly back-to-back on this short 9-kilometre circuit.
It's sheer savagery out there. Look at some of the riders at the back as well. Justin Owen, the US rider with Caja thought he'd left crit racing behind, but well, that's not the case. And you've got to be strong to stay out front. A little bit of a split here in the peloton.
That's Bram Tankink on the front. I just noticed in the background, one of the riders actually missed the corner, went the other side of the traffic hole, and he's on the wrong side of the street. I hope he's got his bunny hopping skills with him here in Norway to get himself back across and into the wheel.
We'll see whether he can...
There he is in the background, so he's had to come back across the grass, and he's not back with the group.
Yeah. Dax coming thick and fast. Kung goes again. The king of the BMC squad, 24-year-old. Couple of stage victories of significance last year in Binkbank and Tour of Romandy. He is a very, very strong rider. He's a developing talent. What a pair of legs to have on the front for the BMC squad. But Alexander Kristoff raced through the town on the front of the peloton, wants to try and sneak clear. And I think after yesterday's experience in the climbs, he really wants to show that European Road Race Champions jersey here on the roads of his hometown.
Well, he said this is his big chance to shine in this Hammer Series. The climb, not really suited to his capabilities, but certainly this Hammer Sprint is. So he's making sure he's up there, trying to keep things rolling. But it was Damien Howson from Mitchelton Scott in the centre of the picture in the black and yellow colours. He shut down that gap to Kristoff and Kung.
It's a big split in the peloton here.
It's a big group.
Are they going to ride? It's a big group to try and get organised.
Well, Tom Leeser, he has a teammate here with him as well in Bram Tankink. He gives a flick of the elbow, but is a very large group. Some 20 riders off the front. And the gap to the peloton, I would say at the moment, would be hovering around the 12 to 15 seconds. And the chase behind, well, that is being led at the moment by Aqua Blue in the front group. Lotto Soudal, they are now at the head of the race. Last lap they were chasing, now they're trying to force this split. A lot of passengers in this group as they head down towards that U-turn. From there, they'll have just over 1 kilometre to the sprint. They're starting to get themselves set up. I see the Quick Steps making a move with Fabio Jakobsen, it looked like, on the left-hand side. So he'll be trying to take that 100 points. Alexander Kristoff, he's looking around, looking for the right wheel to follow.
Now we have a little bit of a Mexican standoff as they all try and realise what they have, and it's an opportunity. Alexander Kristoff hovering in the middle. Will he be denied? He's managed to force this chance, and he's going to, I think, well, he's certainly going to lay it all out in his efforts, but they're riding up into the final kilometre, coming up to this hairpin left. Will take the riders through the final, what, 850 metres. Drag race to the line from here, and they'll get a sense of just what their advantage is as they look across the road at the peloton chasing behind.
Well, there's two Quick Step riders there. The first of them is Nicky Terpstra, so he's the one leading out for his teammate, really trying to place himself right. He wasn't on the front too early, but now he is. Still about 700 metres to go from this point. But that is Jakobsen behind him. So they're starting to line up, and there'll be a bit of a battle to get onto the wheel of Jakobsen. Alexander Kristoff in the white colour. He'll be trying to move himself up. Tom Leeser is in third wheel. Here's an attack from Damien Howson.
Oh, Howson fancies an ambush, and that's the only way that he's going to win this one. So Damien Howson of the Michelin Scott squad that won yesterday's Hammer climb finds himself in a pursuit race with Nicky Terpstra, who actually drops his teammate. So Jakobsen not quite able to follow the wheels there. That leaves a job for Tom Leeser, I think it is trying to close up onto the wheel of Nicky Terpstra. In turn, we've got Alexander Kristoff who's going to launch 200 to the line here. Howson will be swamped, and no one surely is going to deny Alexander Kristoff. This is going to give the crowd a bit of a cheer, but can... Well, no, there's no way that he could come with a late run, but that was, for Alexander Kristoff, a decent haul of points, and Jakobsen just couldn't get off his wheel.
Well, what an interesting sprint that was. I mean, a long, long lead out to catch Damien Howson. for Nicky Terpstra, and Jakobsen, he let him go. He slotted in further back, got himself completely boxed in. But I did notice when he was following Alexander Kristoff, he never even got out of the saddle. He just sat there, saving the legs, not trying to win, but just take good points for second and not overextend himself. Watch it here again from the air. So Jakobsen in the middle, slots through that gap, follows Kristoff. Now keep an eye on Kristoff right near the line. He has a problem with the bike and pulls his foot right at the end, foot out of the pedal. Still manages to hang in there.
Oh, well spotted. And he had the work done at that point. He was able to freewheel through with a bike length advantage, but that's not going to give him a lot of confidence for the next one, is it?
No, so maybe skipped a gear or something there, but anyway, he got away with it. Got the maximum 100 points.
No time to change the shoe plates now, so he'll have to make do. Now the perfect opportunity after the sprint. Looks like Daryl Impey has gone on the counter.
Well, it is absolutely textbook. After an intermediate sprint, just to follow the wheels through and then make your attack. And Impey is a very strong time trialist, so he will take some catching in the background as one of the riders of BMC. And if that was Stefan Kung and he can get across to Daryl Impey, it'll be a formidable duo to try and haul back in.
Still that group have split from the peloton and holding off, and now we've got a canter out of that group that are jogging off up the road, so bodies all over the place, and we've still got 72.5 kilometers of racing, so we're still on the third lap of racing. Quick update: Alexander Kristoff getting the last sprint ahead of Fabio Jakobsen and Soren Kragh Andersen. Chris Lawless, Laser, Impey, who's up the road now, Yuki Beppu, Sonderhall Stenger, Matty Breschel and Moreno Hofland. They were the scorers last time round. Team Sunweb with the early advantage, but it's a narrow one, 12.5 points ahead of UAE Team Emirates, with Team Sky fourth yesterday, third so far, Quickstep fifth yesterday and currently running fourth in the Hammer Sprint. Nippo Vini Fantini have scored some useful points courtesy of Edward Grossu. They sit in fifth. Trek Segafredo, EF Education first, are having a better afternoon already, currently sitting in seventh. Team Lotto NL Jumbo, Mitchell and Scott, Israel Cycling Academy and the rest. That's your top 10 as they run through lap 3. And now another group, and indeed it's a very big group, have managed to leap off the front, and plenty of teams have plenty of riders in there, so plenty of reason to try and chase this one down. But there's some very, very strong legs in here, courtesy of Stefan Kung in the red and black of Team BMC, the Swiss engine that he is, ahead of Daryl Impey, the current South African road race champion, multi-road and indeed time trial champion of his native South Africa. And Daryl Impey back in the sunshine and enjoying the racing in Norway this afternoon.
Well, they are going to be extremely tough to catch. As we see here on the back of this chase group, Fumiyuki Beppu, the Japanese rider from Trek Segafredo, and coming in towards the city centre. But these two riders, Kung and Impey, really have found each other quickly. And if there's anything about these two, they love doing a turn of pace on the front, and a hard one as well. So we could see a similar situation to what we had yesterday with the two riders off the front on the Hammer climb, Albacini and Tall Hook.
Well, Mitchell and Scott dominated yesterday's Hammer climb, courtesy in large measure to the points added by Michael Albacini. Although 4 of their riders did score yesterday, they've managed their resources well. Albacini has gone home after his empty the tank effort yesterday. House and Hamilton, Impey all took part in the climb yesterday, as indeed did Cam Meyer, and they've managed to bring in Roger Kluge into their lineup, who has fresh legs for the fight indeed. But they sit 9th after the first couple of sprints, so it's time for them really to get motoring if they're going to defend their lead and have the maximum advantage, because Hammer Series racing is all about winning each of the first 2 days and putting yourself in the best possible advantage through onto the Hammer Chase. And the Hammer Chase, well, that's all about trying to start first on the road and hang on to what you've got. So we'll bring you through those rules as we come through the afternoon and into tomorrow's third and final installment of Hammer Stavanger. Meanwhile, we're going to focus on lap 3 of the chase as the riders try to find a way through the streets of Stavanger and back onto the tail of Roger Kluge and his breakaway companion Daryl Impey of Mitchell and Scott. Indeed, it's Stefan Kung. Roger Kluge is with the Mitchell and Scott team. Stefan Kung, it is up front here for Team BMC. Big engine to get. Good news for Impey. Well, you might not think it right now because those riders are really fighting for it. Impey, the the better known of the riders in terms of his sprint ability.
Yes, well, I would say Impey is the faster of the two. Kung, the better time trialer. So for Daryl Impey, there's no better person to have out there with him. But I would say if they manage to get a decent gap and fight out multiple sprints, they may then share the spoils a little bit. But Impey, quite an accomplished, fast man in his own right, and does a lot of the leader outwork within the team for the sprinters, guys such as Caleb Ewan. So Impey, he can more than hold his own in a World Tour bunch sprint. And at the moment, the pace really not dropping too much in the peloton either. There's always someone who's missed out, and someone forced to chase.
Well, look at the watts that Stefan Kung, he's a bigger frame and he's putting out more watts, but he needs to do that, doesn't he? Because he is the bigger man. He's got to hold that bigger frame up this 5%. But there's little to choose between them. The cadence, well, it doesn't look like they're revving it out, but they're screaming along at 90, and that's going to go well over 100 when they get back onto the flat road. Speeds, though, you know, it's about 30 kilometers an hour. I think it gives you an idea of just how steep this hill is.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're doing 500 watts and only doing 30 kilometres an hour. It is very steep. And look here, some of these riders. It's Nicky Terpstra towards the back of the group in the blue on the left-hand side. And that really is a solid climb up here out of the city centre of Stavanger. Look further up the road, another couple of riders there trying to get their way across. So the attacks are coming thick and fast out of this group to try and join Impey and Kung off the front.
Nothing organised about it, is it? Lots of teams with lots of riders, and they just want to try and launch one up the road in classic style. EF Education First, I think, are minded to well, try and reset the balance after yesterday's. Alexander Kristoff's not enjoying this hill, is he?
Yeah, really labouring, and he always rides a very big gear too, Kristoff. Really stamps on it. But riders moving off the front, away from that group, so it's forming and reforming these breakaways.
Could be Sonderholm Stenger that's just clipped across to this one. Let's get a sight when they come out of the sunshine. He's going to not hang around as Israel Cycling Academy trying to put riders into the hunt. Get confirmation of that very shortly, but no doubt about the men up front, and it's just splitting to bits. And you know what? If it looks like this on lap 3, what's it going to look like on lap 10?
Well, it gets harder every single time with so many attacks, all these sprints. And this is Simon Geschke, and he is joined by one of the Lotto Soudal riders, Maxime Montfort. So two riders we saw very active yesterday in the Hammer Climb. They're also playing their part here in the Hammer Sprint. So this small hill up out of the city, really proving that it is quite tough and will influence this race. The question is, can they get across to these two strong time trials in front, Kung and Impey?
That would make a hell of a quartet, wouldn't it? I mean, that would be big, strong men. But of them, well, Daryl Impey would feel like he was quids in, because you don't think of Maxime Montfort, 6th overall in the Vuelta a few years ago, as being a sprinter. Neither do Simon Geschke, who's stage winner at the Tour de France, likes the hills.
This is
less
Moscon.
so the sprints. Look at Moscon as a classics rider, and he's hanging on to an absolutely massive gear in his efforts to get across to the lead duo.
Well, we did say at the start of this Hammer Sprint race that the classics type riders will be really suited to this type of racing. A short, sharp hill out of town, a number of little cobbled sections, some turns as well. So you've got to brake, re-accelerate, and then the sprint itself. So you've really got to be multi-talented, a real all-rounder. And the pure sprinters, they tend to struggle just a little bit with so much on offer for everybody else.
Well, Daryl Impey's not minded to wait for Gianni Moscon. He might think that they have been useful to have those legs to assist him, but no way. Those two riders are absolutely flat chat. And you know what? You got a sense from the post-race interviews yesterday that tactical considerations, it's not something that the riders are able to take on board. They just go flat out. It was fascinating to hear that it's almost a bit like the schoolboy racing, like Kermesse racing. It's like the old days, and I think the riders are really enjoying the freedom of this style of racing.
It's a case of don't think, just ride. And Moscon, even if he doesn't get across to the two in front, he knows there's good points on offer for third. So there's always something to keep racing for. Even if you realise you're not getting across, you've got to at least keep going to the line to get those points. And we'll know in a few moments if the peloton has given up on this and this break's going to get some leeway or not. But at the moment, these two riders are really powering away. An 11-second gap back to Moscon. There he is in the background. And then not far behind Moscon is that chasing group we saw go away after the last sprint. It's Daryl Impey. His timing was just absolutely perfect to get away after that sprint. And couldn't ask for a better partner in crime than Stefan Kung.
12 seconds the advantage. There's a small group behind. Are they going to be reabsorbed by the peloton, or are the peloton going to perhaps cry enough? A few riders in there that need to keep scoring, remember. But we're coming up to the hairpin and 800 meters to go. And a quick reminder that we've got double points on offer on this lap, so it's not a bad time to head off up the road for Daryl Impey of the Mitchelton Scott squad, and indeed for Stefan Kung of the BMC team. This duo working well together, very much with shared interests. But for how much longer through this final kilometre up to the line, and Kung is going to lay it all out. He's not going to let these riders back into contention. Who's going to mop up the top hole of points? But for BMC, it's certainly going to be good news. For Mitchell and Scott, good news indeed as well. Riders behind, indeed numerous riders in that chasing group, so possible double scoring. More than one rider going to be able to score here. Let's focus now on this two-up sprint for top points.
Well, the timing is very good for these two riders, because BMC in 12th after 2 sprints, Mitchelton Scott in 9th after 2 sprints. So these double points will come in very handy to bring them back towards the top of the table. Impey now with the advantage in the slipstream of Stefan Kung. Just a couple hundred metres to go, and he's refusing to take over. He's lining him up. He had a quick look behind to make sure no one's going to surprise him. Moscon at 10 seconds. As they're going to come to the line, Impey now goes to make the acceleration.
Impey goes for the line as he goes for top points, and surely no one is going to stop this South African, who's a former Tour de France race leader, and he goes through takes 200 points on offer. It's a decent haul for Stefan Kung, and they had enough in hand over Gianni Moscon of Team Sky, who's third across the line, so he in turn also adds to Sky's haul. It's a much more contested sprint with Sondre Holstenger just trying to get up ahead of Tuns. Not sure if he made it. Indeed, Hofland it was. Søren Kragh just about managing to hang on ahead of Sondre Holstenger, Hofland, Van Mark, Enkhorn, Tankink, and Baggioli is infiltrating and move once more behind. The bunch not exactly sure what to do right now. The riders clipping away. They recognise that they're not terribly well represented up front, if at all, so Lotto Soudal want to put a rider up front. Let's get a look at this again, Robbie.
Well, Daryl Impey, he knows he's faster than Stefan Kung, just waiting for his moment. Kung, he was trying to leave it late and go with the jump of Impey, but, well, he knew that it wasn't likely he was going to beat him in a sprint, and he pretty quickly settled back in, knowing he's going to take the points for second, but a big points haul with double points on the line that time, and will really move his team BMC right up the rankings with that result. In the background, though, Team Sunweb defending well, third across the line with Anderson, and they stay on top of the table at the moment after 3 sprints. Mitchelton Scott now up into second.
Well, what we saw yesterday was a large chunk of the Hammer climb was occupied with 2 riders up front. Antoine Tolhoek in the company of Michael Albacini of Mitchelton Scott. Well, now we have 2 up front with a narrow advantage, but they're hanging on to it, and it's showing well. They're showing it a 21-second lead, and is that the lead over the second rider on, the third rider on the road from Team Sky, Gianni Moscon? I think it could well be. So I think has Moscon been reabsorbed by the chasers behind? So that's good news for these 2 riders up front. They're extending their advantage. They've got first look at the only technical aspect of the course through that little roundabout. And behind, have we got an organised chase?
Well, I'd say we have an unorganised chase, a bit of one-out riding at the moment, and there are 2 riders there from the Lotto NL Jumbo team. That's one of them who is on the front of this group at the moment, trying to bring this gap back, but at the moment the gap is just growing. 25 seconds now. Impey and Kung back into team's time trial mode, and I think it would really be in Daryl Impey's interest, maybe on the next lap, that Kung takes top points. It's of course not double points, and share the workload and share the spoils as well.
Keep him interested.
Yeah, keep him interested, keep him working hard.
We didn't see that sort of largesse being displayed by his teammate Michael Albacini yesterday. Antoine Tolhoek understanding his role in that breakaway group, slotting in second pretty much every lap around, with one exception, I think. But it'll be interesting to see whether Impey has to play it a slightly different way, whether Stefan Kung is of a mind to play it in another way. Well, we've had all action so far this afternoon. breakaway groups establishing themselves right from the start. Edward Tuns for Team Sunweb scoring at the first time of asking, adding a nice haul of points. Alexander Kristoff's brought his sprinting legs, if not his climbing legs, this afternoon. He took the second lap, a nice haul of points for Team UAE, Team Emirates, ahead of Fabio Jakobsen, who just couldn't get off the wheel of the superstar Norwegian. And then we had our duo up front for the double point score on laps 3, 6, and 10, of course. Double points on offer at those laps. It was Daryl Impey ahead of Stefan Kung, and that's the way the situation remains. Almost a half a minute to the good as we race back down into the harbour with the climb to come.
Well, these two riders, they are extending that gap. It was 21, then 25, and now a kilometre later, 28 seconds. So these two riders moving away in the city centre of Stavanger now again, and just 5 kilometres or so from the next sprint. And there on the graphic we can see L, our leaders, and C for Chase, and that gap just over 400 metres, just under again, depending on where they exactly are on course, what they're doing, cornering, going up or down.
It's remarkable, isn't it? I mean, if we were watching your average road race, 24 seconds would be a heartbeat. It'd be a blink of the eye. It'd be absolutely no problem for the bunch behind to get on terms. This style of racing, it's a very different state of affairs.
Well, even with the chase group that's behind, they're sprinting every lap, so they're not just working cohesively to try and close the gap. They've all got something to sprint for, and not just for a third place, but right down to the end of the top 10. And this is why that gap's come down slightly, because one rider has jumped away in pursuit of our
looks like
first
the big
two.
bunch have got back up with the chasers, so that is an interesting development. The big group still continuing to press on, but Team Sunweb gonna lay the watts down through the town, with Aqua Blue Sport also thereabouts. Nippo Vini Fantini putting riders into the chase, and that could be bad news actually for these two riders.
Could be bad news for them that a concerted chase comes from behind, and of course there's 12 teams not represented in front. There should be plenty of riders willing and able to mount a chase. Although, will we see more attacks? Because they're about to hit that hill again out of the city centre, away from the harbour. And this is the lone rider in between, the first chaser, and not making an impression anymore on our two leaders. A rider from Lotto NL Jumbo, and I doubt he'll survive through to take the points next time through. I don't think our two leaders will be caught for the next sprint.
Well, if they manage to score another 100 on the line, well, it's a decent payday for them, isn't it? It might be Enkhorn, just waiting for a full confirmation of the Lotto NL Jumbo rider, who's the lone chaser of our duo up front, holding on to that half-minute advantage, which is a pretty healthy one, you'd have to say. At the back of the group, where riders are trying to get a bit of a breather, this is Julian Cardona, who's sitting in. Sitting in is not exactly the easiest thing to do, though, I can tell you. Pretty much everybody, his lungs are coming out through their mouth, not least Daryl Impey, but he looks very much in control of his effort, the Michelin Scott rider. He's a veteran now, he's been around a while, but he's seen and done it all at the very top level. Stefan Kung, well, he's a little bit earlier in his career, a slightly different style of rider as well, but he's a huge asset to the BMC squad through the year. These riders riding at a tempo that's a little bit more contained up the hill than I think we're going to see from the group chasing behind any moment now. 32 seconds as they stall in their efforts, and well, it's a bit of a stall as well from our lone chaser from Team Lotto NL Jumbo.
Well, he's seen it's just futile to continue with that counter-attack, and our leading two riders just moving away. 37 seconds now the gap. Both very good individual time trialists and teams time trialists, and a lot will be expected of Kung and Impey tomorrow in the Hammer Chase. But at the moment, they are out there gaining maximum points each lap through the finish.
Quick reminder, it's Team Sunweb that still lead, although their advantage has been pared considerably, down to just 14 points between themselves and Mitchelton Scott. That's not a lot indeed. Israel Cycling Academy on the attack out of the bunch. Team Sky lying in third place at the moment. They're still very much in touch as well, just 22 points back. BMC, UAE, Lotto NL Jumbo, Israel Cycling Academy, EF Education first, Nippo Vini Fantini and Lotto Soudal in that order through the top 10, but it is still early stages. The gap, though, is going out for our two out front, as that was something of was that a ceasefire lap up the hill for the bunch? Well, they can't afford to do too many of those.
Well, what they really do need to do is not attack each other up the hill. If they want to catch these two, it's to ride tempo, keep it smooth, stay together, and then start to try and wind them back in. Use the power of numbers in the bunch and a bit of cooperation. But at the moment, it only seems to be the team of Aqua Blue trying to chase on the front of the peloton. We have this counter-attack from the Israel Cycling Academy hanging in between.
Yeah, Sander Stavanger scoring well at least one of the sprints. He managed to get up, I think, on one occasion. And it's good to see him back in action after crashing on stage 1 of the Tour de Fjords. Didn't manage to start stage 2 as a result. So Sander Stavanger had a string of strong performances in Tour of Norway lately. This is Edwin Avila, who was in the move on the first lap, you'll remember, but started his sprint from the back and couldn't find a way through. He's a decent sprinter, the Colombian rider. Tends to score well on hilly stages that end in a group finish. The likes of Tour of Langkawi and Tour of Einant suiting him in the past. He'll do well to race across a half-minute gap to engines of the quality of Stefan Kung and Daryl Impey.
A little bit of conversation there. Question being asked by Kung. And don't be surprised if Kung leads this time through. The 30-second gap, it's feasible that these two could stay away right throughout the race with their time trial powers and capability.
So what's Kung saying? He's saying, you know, I'm not continuing to help you if you don't help me.
I think it would have been a very quick, this one's mine, yes? Question mark.
Yes, the language of cycling negotiation, it tends not to be too flowery in the pros. There's only a certain amount of time to get the communication out, isn't there?
Yep, you need all the oxygen going to the muscles, feed those legs. So very short, staccato communication.
A nod of assent, perhaps, or will there be a shake of the head, or no communication in return from Daryl Impey? We're going to find out very shortly. We've got Edwin Avila behind, who's absolutely emptying himself. And you know what? He could have a chance of hanging on for third here. Feel confident that, well, I'm not so sure, actually. I'm starting to doubt even that statement, just as the riders make their way through on the opposite side of the road, charging into the last couple of kilometres before we have our fourth sprint of the afternoon.
Well, Declan, look there at the peloton. We had Aqua Blue doing a lot of the chasing, but just with one rider, and behind that rider was Mitchelton Scott and BMC, so really protecting that lead of Impey and Kung. And now the impetus really gone out of this chasing peloton. But they also know there's plenty of points still on offer. The next 8 riders through will also score points, so they don't have to catch these two to score good points.
It's almost as if they're just covering the lead of Avila. They know they can. He's well within catching distance. They're not thinking too much about these two riders. We're going to ride it all the way to the line, I feel. Stefan Kung leads them through and under the kite and into the final, what, 600-700 metres. Edwin Avila has an opportunity to dangle off the front, but will he be swamped in the sprint to the line? That's going to be the more interesting and more stimulating effort, I think, coming up very shortly.
I'm calling it now. He's not going to get there.
Okay, yeah, I think it would be a brave and very impressive effort, because judging by the faces he's pulling, he's not much enjoying it right now. Indeed, it is a half-a-minute lead for our duo up front, but it's just a few seconds advantage over the peloton for Edwin Avila of the Israel Cycling Academy. Currently sitting in 7th place. It's been a solid effort so far for them. Aqua Blue Sport, yes, to score. Car Rural as well. The only two teams yet to put some points on the board in the Hammer Sprint.
A bit of a second win there for Avila, trying to hold them off. And back to our leading two, Kung and Impey, who will take the points this time. Well, let's look at the body language as they come up towards the line, Declan. And Impey not yet out of the saddle. This here is Avila trying to hang in there. The sprint winding up behind him. 500 metres to go. Oh, it's a long way.
Oh, he's put a lot into this, and he's going to... well, it was Kung and Impey, so nice piece of speculation there from Robbie. Nicely called. And Edwin Avila has been swamped. But who's going to get this one? It's Kluge that's drilling it on the front, and he's a trackman of some ability, but Alexander Kristoff has massive watts to burn. Fabio Jakobsen's also struggling to come off the wheel. That's a little late effort, and it's Alexander Kristoff that has managed to score a nice haul of points there. Jakobsen adding to Quickstep's total as well. Kluge hangs on for 5th ahead of Tunes, Breschel, Martinelli and the rest. The overall standings get an update. It's an extension indeed of moving into the lead for Mitchelton Scott, winners of the Hammer Climb. It's going well for them too in the Hammer Sprint.
Well, it's absolutely ideal for Mitchelton Scott at the moment with Daryl Impey off the front this time. Just content to stay in the wheel, let Stefan Kung go through and take the 100 points, share and share alike, and make sure there's a good understanding. And if you're going to be out there working so hard together, there needs to be a little bit of give and take.
Now Stefan Kung is more motivated, and any little wobbles and doubts that he might have been having, I mean, Team BMC back behind, they'll feel a little bit less anxious about it because they have an opportunity. Sitting third overall at the moment, you know, I mean, obviously they want to win, so they've got to try and find a way past Daryl Impey to do it, but more communication.
Yep, just talking to each other about the gap. We see that now at 23 seconds, so that gap down to effectively 350 metres on the road.
It's nip and tuck. That gap's coming down. 23 seconds. And it's Aqua Blue Sport have got to get in there. Team Sky have put Ryder in there, and so too Trek Segafredo with a couple. BMC are covering this one. Want to get another rider up the road. If they're going to chase down Stefan Kung, they want at least to be represented. Will there be a contribution, though? Because Kung has started to score, and score big. The bunch behind, stretched thin. This counter-attack has served to close it down. 23 seconds they're showing. I wonder if it's even a little bit less than that.
Hello, sound. Your mic is open. We're getting a lot of noise. Can you please rectify that?
Through the roundabout, make the left turn and head down the hill towards the harbour for one more push.
Hello, sound.
And that little. That little counter not quite working. Now we have Team Lotto NL Jumbo, Carural trying to cover this one.
Turn your mic off, please.
Stefan Kung in the wheel of Daryl Impey. And those two riders, 19 seconds now. It's coming down. Will they be getting the news from the team car, Robbie? Will they be updated about this, and will they have they anything else to give? That's the real question.
Well, they will know that the gap is coming down, and if they care on those straight sections to take a look over their shoulder, they'll also see that peloton starting to bear down on them. That gap shrinking all the time, down to 17 seconds now. But, Mitchelton Scott also very active in the front of that peloton, following the moves, protecting the lead of Daryl Impey and Stefan Kung.
Lars Bohm on the front for Team Lotto NL Jumbo. He's pushing hard, has a little look around. Who's he dragging away with him? Aqua Blue Sport trying to get into this one as well. Sky and everybody, that's the pro way, isn't it? You go off the front and have a look around to see what the effect of it is. It's always making the calculation, always trying to understand the dynamics of what's happening.
They're looking for a bit of positive reinforcement. Am I hurting people? Is there a gap? Oh, yes, that feels good.
Yes, well, they're definitely hurting people. I can be sure of that.
And then if there isn't a gap and they're not pulling faces behind you, pull to the side like, no, that wasn't a real one. I'm not trying yet. It was just a tester.
Yeah. Yes. It's all about race phases. A little bit of an adjustment needed by Daryl Impey there as Stefan Kung goes for a racing line. These riders now through and past the harbour front once more. Stall on the front. It's got to be good news. The gap will come down to just 11 seconds and nobody wants. Where's the next counter coming from? EF Education first in those pink jerseys, just gravitating towards the front. And after a positive start, they've slipped to 7th in the standings. Team Lotto NL Jumbo as well. Great performance from them yesterday and indeed last year as well in Limburg. They're sitting 8th and they want to try and improve on that.
It's interesting there, Declan. We saw that gap coming right down to 11 seconds. One of the Team Sky riders on the front of the group, but almost riding as if he's protecting this gap, not going on with it when he had a real chance to narrow that gap down and rely on one of his teammates to make the next move on the hill as they leave the harbour here. And that gap at 10 seconds, so obviously someone behind is doing something on the front. But at the moment, they seem a little reluctant to make that final acceleration across. It's now one of the riders of Caja Rural.
Yeah, well, they've yet to score, so they've really got to do something. We've seen quite a bit of activity, too, from Aqua Blue Sport, but it's a sort of frantic and worried and anxious activity, isn't it? Luis Masponet is a reasonable sprinter for Caja Rural. In this company, will he be able to come up with a decent point-scoring effort?
Well, here's an attack we see from the helicopter. There was a lone rider coming out of the harbour from the peloton. So he's trying to cross this gap, and that will be why that is slunk down to 7 seconds now to Impey and Kung. There's one rider trying to come across that gap. They are now on the hill out of the city, the steepest part. And this looks a bit like Will Clark again, very active in lap 1.
He's shown plenty of legs, hasn't he? Matty Breschel, also part of their lineup. Cardona, Kim Magnussen, we saw on lap 1. Sepp van Mark's been pretty quiet, hasn't he, by his standards. We saw last year that he was certainly willing to lay it all out at Hammer Limburg, but in Hammer Stavanger, he's coming off a long layoff after the classic season, and sometimes it takes riders a few days really to get their racing legs again.
Yeah, still trying to find the legs in such intense racing like this. That is very difficult to do. So it's sometimes hard to find the legs when they're being constantly ripped off in races like this Hammer Stavanger today in the sprint. But we have seen riders yesterday make their mark in the second half of the race, as did Anderson from Sunweb, made his contribution after the halfway mark, and particularly in those final 2 laps. So maybe Sepp van Mark, he'll come up with something a little bit later on. And at the moment, Kung and Impey still hanging tough. 9-second lead to the peloton. And acceleration's coming, but no concerted chase from any one team in particular.
Well, we're just over halfway in this race, down to the last 50 kilometres of racing. Stefan Kung will continue to look forwards and not backwards. Daryl Impey in turn. It's the one opportunity on the course that they have to hand out a bottle, and there are a few bottles being tossed aside and collected. For all that this is a short bike race, those riders staying hydrated, not just for today, but for tomorrow as well. The Hammer Chase to come tomorrow. The results of today, and indeed yesterday, cumulatively, will decide their starting position for tomorrow's Hammer Chase. As Israel Cycling Academy on the attack once more. It looks like could be Sander Holstenger, I think, who's trying his luck. And Holstenger perhaps seeing an opportunity just to clip across and into this move. And you wonder perhaps if these riders could do with the assistance of 1 or 2 riders that have fresh legs to offer.
Well, it's been very aggressive up that climb from the peloton. A lot of attacks and counter-attacks. Now's the moment where either somebody's got to go on with it and close this gap, or we will see that gap open back up. Kung and Impey just riding a constant tempo, so that same power output, not going into the red zone on the hill. So you'll see that time gap fluctuate somewhat. But if the peloton doesn't really keep this push going now, you'll see the gap start to open back up. And already looking into the background, that has gone back out over 10 seconds again. And I would wager it's even slightly more.
An entire lap of this course is, if you've got 400 watts, you're going to be able to hang out clear of this peloton. It's no problem at all, really. And if you did that last lap, you probably did it the lap before or something like it.
Well, he probably did even more on the previous 2 laps if he's averaged, just riding tempo, mind you, 400 watts.
Max of 800. Is that out of the hairpins or up that bit of a hill? It's impressive stuff. And riders absolutely emptying themselves to try and come across. Israel Cycling Academy, AF Education first, Drapac powered by Cannondale, the world's longest name, and a squad that needs to try and score. So too Cara Oral, yet to trouble the scores so far in the Hammer Sprint. We see the Nippo Vinifantini squad gravitating towards the front of the peloton as well. Sunweb trying to defend a situation. They're currently sitting second in the standings. It's a 75-point gap. Mitchell and Scott have been divided from Team BMC by Team Sunweb, who are scoring well with Tuns and others.
Well, still very important to race for those 3rd, 4th, 5th and through to 10th positions. And the peloton really not giving up the chase. So Sunweb leading the peloton behind these 3 counter-attackers from Israel Cycling Academy, EF Drapac and Caja Rural, and they are going to close that gap now. But the gap to the front is growing. 16 seconds now, the gap to Kung and Impey. So as you said, very aggressive on the climb from the peloton. They narrowed that gap to some 7 seconds at one point. Now it's gone back out, 16. So Impey and Kung going away again.
Well, brave effort from Sander Holstenger, but I think he looks like he's going to just persevere on the front for a little while longer, and then he pulls across. I think for a moment he thought he was going to get a free ride back off the front of the peloton, but they continue to set a steady tempo, and that steady tempo could spell bad news for our duo up front.
Well, behind these 2, who look very much like they will stay away to the next sprint, and I will back them to do that. Behind, still plenty of points on offer. And what I've noticed in the last couple of laps is Fabio Jakobsen from Quickstep has not tried to come out of the slipstream and make a full effort. He's been nipping off good points without putting himself in the wind, without making a maximal effort, which means instead of doing one winning sprint, he's capable of doing 3 or 4 well-scoring sprints without really burning the legs too much. See what he's got this time, as the peloton will be racing for third-place points at the line.
It's not a million miles removed from track racing, points racing, is it? And it's a nice way to do it. If Fabio Jakobsen continues to save energy and score heavily on a regular basis, well, he's fourth across the line last lap round behind Alexander Kristoff, as Robbie has just mentioned. So Fabio Jakobsen, the rider from Team Quickstep in the blue colours, will be the man to watch. Coming to the line, we see Stefan Kung has a little look over his shoulder. Daryl Impey runs to the front. Suspect Impey's going to get this one in an uncontested situation. These riders don't need to be scrapping, because it's all they can do to hold off the baying pack behind, who are going to shave a few chunks off this one as they wind it up for the gallop through to the line. No riders clear at the moment. Sunweb putting riders in there. And is this Grossu perhaps for Nippo Fantini? Well, they've got a rider well up as Bauhaus it is, gets ahead of Grossu, Halverson, Wouters, Breschel, Beppu, Hamilton and Tuns. So
Bauhaus is there again.
Another solid haul, and Halverson starting to score. It was good news for Team Sky there, because Mitchell and Scott, as they stretch their lead over Sunweb's, maintaining their position in second ahead of BMC. BMC need to start scoring. Double points now, next lap round.
Well, it's looking very much like they're about to get caught, as that gap was really coming down. A very long lead out from the peloton for that last sprint. Here's some onboard footage. You see the rider from Team Sky getting his way up the inside in the background, and indeed that is Bauhaus, the German from Sunweb. So Turns and Bauhaus, they're really sharing the work well and clipping off some really good points in the background.
Big unit, isn't he, Phil Bauhaus? And they have sprinting talent. Eddie Tuns has been doing a lot of their scoring so far, but Phil Bauhaus is a nice second option, to say the least. He is one of the top riders. And look, it's all up. It's been a great effort, hasn't it? It's been a wonderful haul of points. It has been superbly done and orchestrated and harvested by Daryl Impey and Stefan Kung, but they're back in the fold, and now we've got a double points lap with a little bit of a split in the peloton. That'll surely be knitted back together again, as these riders increasingly are having to take some sort of a breather. These efforts are really starting to cost them.
Well, you would think that they'd be willing to and wanting to take a breather, but with double points on offer next lap, here's a really good opportunity to go on the attack. It was a really tough sprint, a very long lead out, high paced all the way in, caught the leaders now, so a great opportunity. Someone with a little bit fresher legs who's managed to keep themselves out of the wind and have a conservative ride so far to go and try and get double points. Here's an attack from one of the Israel Cycling Academy riders.
Yeah, no lack of effort from Israel Cycling Academy. Currently,
Dennis van Winden, that is.
Yeah, he was up the road yesterday in the Hammer climb, so he's got facility in the lumpy stuff and also on the flat roads. Meanwhile, down at the back of the group, it's pain and suffering. And how am I going to get back up there from Will Clark? You remember he was up the road in that move on the first lap, and now he finds himself in a situation where it would probably take him a lap to get to the front of the bunch. Maybe not. Things change quickly in Hammer Sprint racing. Lotto Soudal, Sunweb, Israel Cycling Academy and Team Sky clear of the bunch. Mitchell and Scott trying to put a rider into the move. It's Cragg again. Well, he's knows no bounds the levels of his energy. If it is, we'll wait for full confirmation. Could well be Storer as well, I think. Remember, Bauhaus to the fore in the sprints last lap round, third over the line behind our lead duo, Impey and Kung.
Oh, in the background, one of the riders from Trek Segafredo, also trying to close down the gap. Looked a bit like Fumi Beppu. He was down on the top tube, down that downhill, pedaling while on the top tube.
Michal Golash has managed to infiltrate this one as well in his efforts to try and get up front. I say infiltrate, he's part of the chase group, just stepping over. Well, Trek Segafredo have some work to do, sitting 12th of the 14 teams. They have managed to score their last of the teams that have scored, so I think with the likes of Fumiyuko, Beppo and others, they need to try and see, can they find something very, very quickly.
Well, Beppu took a 10th place across the line a couple of laps ago. He's been active and he's been trying ever so hard. Kunda Court was up early in that very first breakaway of the day, but they're down in 12th at the moment. Also Team Lotto Sudal scoring very well yesterday with Lumbrex and the Hammer Climb, but at the moment they're back in 11th position.
We did see from Trek Segafredo Cohen de Court scoring well in the very early stages. We saw that yesterday as well with Michael Google, but they haven't quite got the hang of the rhythm. I wonder if we can hear from the Trek Segafredo car now. They've got work to do.
Good man, Matty. 7th again. Next lap, double points. We're doing good, guys. We need to share the workload out and try one at a time with the moves and the sprints together. Everybody has to contribute, just like we're doing now. Super good, guys.
Well, there you go. Some encouragement from Charlie Wegelius for the EF Drapac team. They tell them they're doing very well, but share the workload, and that is really what is necessary. It is true team racing in the Hammer Series.
Well, they're sitting 7th overall. A little bit better than yesterday, so they're certainly stepping up the order, having finished yesterday's in rather anonymous 14th position. They've scored well, 326 points so far as against Mitchell and Scott's 500. What's noticeable at just after the halfway point, it's much tighter. This issue is going to be in doubt right the way to the final sprint. It's quite a contrast to yesterday's climb.
Yeah, still very open. We saw yesterday's race dominated by Albacini and Tolhoek. Today, it looked like Kung and Impey may be out there for the long run, but hauled back in around halfway. And now all open, and the ball is in the court of the sprinters now. Double points on offer this time. They're about to hit that hill yet again. It comes around so very quickly. Each lap seems to get shorter and shorter because it feels like as a rider you're hitting that hill more often. It just comes around and hits you straight in the face. And this is Tolhoek, so one of the riders who was off the front yesterday, he is on the attack again.
Antoine Tolhoek, he did such a great job of work yesterday, didn't he? And Alexander Kristoff's going to try and chase him up the hill. That's an unequal challenge, you'd have to say, isn't it? Tolhoek, who absolutely, this is probably the only part of the course that he really does love. He dances on the pedals, the 24-year-old. Well, he's putting the hurt on Shane Archbold and others. The big crowd here in Stavanger really enjoying this Hammer Sprint racing this afternoon as riders are getting shelled. Luis Mas, who's a decent finisher for the Carrerel squad, but he's struggling even to stay in the wheels. These riders really suffering here, and Antoine Tolhoek has done it.
Yeah, well, you see riders really paying for their efforts here in the Hammer Series. You go too soon, you make a big effort, you will be made to pay. Will Clark was also down the back there. This is Dylan Turns, the Belgian, who's come through to the fore now for Team BMC.
He is an absolutely class rider, and he had such a purple patch last autumn when he won the overalls in Tour of Poland, Wallonie, the Arctic Tour indeed in Norway as well. He just couldn't stop winning for about 6-8 weeks. And Dylan Turns is a rider who's coming into form now. I've been looking forward to seeing when he would start to light the blue touch paper and really go for it in this. Well, there is an alternative of sporting activities on offer. Plenty of water in the water below, and not everybody has stepped out of the cruise ship and leaned over the railings to see the racing on offer as they ride through Stavanger this afternoon. It's been thrilling fare throughout. Everybody is surfing the rapids to glory this afternoon, or at least trying to. Out on the road, Tolhoek has been closed down, so too Dylan Turns, but a bit of a group has started to stretch clear. Mitchell and Scott have put, could it be Kluge? Wait for full confirmation of that. And, well, they needed to. And Trek Segafredo, who we mentioned, are sitting back towards the back of the standings, have put 2 riders into this move. Quick Step as well. Mitchell and Scott with 2 riders in.
It's Lucas Hamilton from Mitchell and Scott in 3rd wheel. At the back of the group, Damien Howson. So the good climbers now have really come through. Tolhoek, Turns, Howson, Hamilton, Michael Goggle, quite possibly from Trek Segafredo. He's trying to make amends for yesterday. Early attacker, took big points, didn't finish the race. His points didn't count, so his team slipped down the rankings.
Yeah, you got to finish. Finish first. First you must finish. Now Team Sky recognizing the danger of that one. Meanwhile, after all his efforts of late, the Israel Cycling Academy's Sondre Holstanger finds himself at the back of the field, just trying to get a bit of a breather, and there's no let up in the action. Riders starting to, well, trying to just jump across And indeed, riders jumping out of this one. I don't think that was Hamilton's aim there, really. He just rode through at such a rate that he put some of the others into a little bit of difficulty.
Yeah, really trying to open the gap. This is Nicky Terpstra, who's also made the move. Terpstra also a very fast finisher. Most of the riders here are more pure climbers. They've been able to take the advantage of that hill and get themselves off the front. But not many men, I'd say, are sprinters.
And that, in a way, offers them an opportunity to try and, you know, stay out front, because they'll have shared interests. They won't be afraid to ride with each other because one of the others is going to take the sprints.
Well, I think they'll all be happy to get off the front and make a contribution to their team. So the climbers, they've got to take any opportunity they get, attacked on the hill and get that gap, and then try and see if they can get themselves some points. They're not going to take those points in a bunch sprint. They've got to try and slip away and cooperate with each other in a group. And a few duos here in this front group. Trek Segafredo, Mitchelton Scott as well. And all things winding up behind under the impetus of Team Sunweb.
So that group is going to last out front, the head of the race with Mitchelton Scott. Lucas Hamilton, Damien Howson doing a solid job for them, aren't they? There's Nicky Terpstra, winner of Paris-Roubaix, winner too of Tour of Flanders this year, and E3 Harold Becca, and a string of other races. He has won for, I think he won Le Salmon as well. It was a wonderful spring campaign for himself and indeed for the Quick Step squad. Coming into this race, I do believe with a haul of around about 34 wins. I've run out of fingers quite a while ago to try and tot up the number of victories that Quick Step have had this year. They're absolutely flying, and Terpstra's been a major contributor to their haul. Terpstra at the back, well, just in the center of this group, and the peloton has managed to make its way back on through the left-hander with just about 850 meters remaining. This one is going to be an altogether more controlled setup to the sprint, Robbie.
Yeah, well, it looks like it's almost going to all come back together. There's still a little gap, and they've hesitated behind. So Howson, he's trying to keep the pace on. Also Dylan Turns, and a lot of these riders don't have a lot of experience in sprinting for wins. And here's an attack now from Trek Segafredo.
Trek Segafredo with two riders up front in that recent attack, and with plenty of reason to try and step on the gas. They haven't been able to get in amongst them in the sprints so far today, so they've got to try a different tack. Got to try, perhaps, Robbie, to surprise everyone. Look at Alexander Kristoff languishing in about 8th or 9th position at the moment. Terpstra still sitting in 3rd. Where are the attacks going to come from? Where are the big sprints going to come from?
Well, Alexander Kristoff, he did get himself a long way back, and look, he just doesn't have the legs to go with them this time, being led out behind, at the front, and that looks like it could be Bauhaus off the front. So Sunweb taking tops points. It was actually Søren Kragh Andersen beating Nicky Terpstra to the line. Dylan Turns, the climber, a handy sprint in 3rd. Moscon, Tom Leesert, Alexander Kristoff in 6th, Lucas Hamilton and Damien Howson 7th and 8th for Mitchelton Scott. Hofland and Kunde Kort taking points for Trek Segafredo.
So Mitchelton Scott hanging on to their lead by the narrowest of margins. It's a significantly reduced one as Team Sunweb take a massive haul of points. Double points scored on the line, remember, just a moment ago. We'll have another double points haul at the final sprint on lap 10, and it's Søren Kragh who was the difference for his team, finishing in 4th or finishing in 2nd place yesterday, and he's done the work the Oracle again. A nice little 200-point haul. That's the second. If you add in his 200-point haul in the Hammer Climb yesterday, Søren Kragh is making big contributions.
Well, they do say timing is everything, and Søren Kragh Andersen's timing has been impeccable over these first 2 stages of this Hammer Series, and really keeping his team in contention. His efforts yesterday lifting them from 6th to 2nd over the last 2 laps. And today, with those points at the moment, they are holding down 2nd place behind Mitchelton Scott, who also scored well then. 2 riders in the top 10 in 7th and 8th with Hamilton and Howson.
Antoine Tolhoek is clear again, trying his luck. And classic
Can we get rid
counter
of the
attack after
Norwegian
the sprint.
commentary, please?
As the BMC squad have put Tom Bowley into this little one. Team Sky with riders in there. Mitchell and Scott never miss a move. Got 2 riders up there once more. This one suits them to stay away. And it's interesting that it's split behind as well. The peloton have split considerably. Massive fracture after that last sprint.
Yeah, well, it was almost coming back together. The gap was really quite small, but then it really has opened up over the last kilometre or so. So it looks like these climbers, they are going to get a fair bit of leeway and be fighting it out, and that is very good news for Team Sunweb, as Søren Andersen showing such good speed in that double point sprint. So Team Sunweb with a sole rider taking the top points, but it's the duos who are also doing some pretty good business up there at the front. Mitchelton Scott with Hamilton and Howson.
Well, we've got 4 sprints remaining in the Hammer Sprint this afternoon, and it's a nice little counter-attacking group that have stretched clear of the peloton, which is at 6s and 7s, isn't it? Quite literally in terms of numbers, maybe 10s and 11s. And there are quite a few non-finishers as well. Lots of riders have been forced to pull out of this event. No riders who've scored points have yet stopped. So everybody's who scored is still out there, still contributing and still helping their team.
Well, Declan, in the background there, quite a large chase group, a counter-attack trying to come across to these front riders. There's a Kunda Court now, turn of pace on the front, a rider in the red from Trek Segafredo. If you look further back along the road, you'll see that chase group coming into the picture, trying to make their way across. And it'll be very important to see which teams have the numbers and have the multiples to really take advantage of this point scoring system. And when it is points down to the top 10, very important to have a second rider from the team up there with you, scoring as much as possible.
Alexander Kristoff rolls through and has a contribution from Michelin Scott. The back here is Tom Laser, who's one of the better sprinters from Team Lotto NL Jumbo. Team Lotto NL Jumbo have drifted a little bit in the point standings since the beginning of this race. Lars Bohm so active on lap 1, but now they're sitting in 7th position. So it's a useful opportunity for Team Lotto NL Jumbo, and Tom Laser is going to try and surf the wheels for as long as possible. Well, in the last few laps, we've seen the leaders out front, the early leaders, Stefan Kung and Daryl Impey, hoovering up a decent haul of points. Stefan Kung negotiating his way, you might say, to that 100 points. Daryl Impey takes the double score. A little earlier on, lap 5 as well, going to the South African rider. And then Soren Kragh drifting clear and holding off Nicky Terpstra to take a very useful 200-point haul for Team Sunweb that's moved them up into, well, almost untouching distance of Mitchelton Scott at the top of the standings. There's the recent laps. Team Sunweb involved in this one as well. Team Sky and Trek Segafredo with 2 in the move, or do they still? They certainly did have a few moments ago. Team Sky with 1. BMC represented, a couple of riders from Mitchelton Scott. And it's a decent advantage too, isn't it, as Alexander Kristoff, the chase group behind, including Leonardo Basso's in there for Team Sky.
2 riders there from Trek Segafredo in that chase group. Gregory Daniel is one of those, along with Michael Gogol. So Kunda Court in the front. If these groups come together, quite an advantage if you can have 3 riders in that group sprinting for points. They come back around the harbour yet again, and that climb looming in front of them. The gap now 20 seconds from our break to our first chase group, and they have now been caught. So the peloton coming back to that chase group 1. So one big group at 22 seconds behind our break, containing a number of good climbers. And then the fastest man last lap through, proving to be Søren Kragh Andersen from Team Sunweb. Very tight at the top of the table now. 603 points for Mitchelton Scott, 573 for Team Sunweb. 30 points difference. That is pretty quickly evaporated, especially when they're double point sprints. So far from run and won this Hammer Sprint.
Yeah, far from it indeed. 22 seconds the lead for these riders up front. It's Steady Eddie being played by the Mitchelton Scott squad. They've got riders in abundance in the move, with Klug at the back just playing a watching brief, and he'll keep his young rider Lucas Hamilton. He'll keep him organised and make sure that they continue with this effort. As Anderson, the rider for Magnussen, indeed, the Swedish national champion, wants to try and provide a springboard for his teammate from EF Education First.
Well, that was an interesting move. We saw Roger Kluger was not originally in that group. He's made his way across out of the chase group. He's left them behind. given a third rider in front for Mitchelton Scott. And in the background, attacks continue on this climb, but less riders now willing to go on the counter-attack. Is becoming so very hard. And is this Matty Breschel? Wait for confirmation of that, but EF Drapak on the move, trying to set up a counter-attacking group to get across to this, our leading group. Dylan Toons off from the front. This is Lucas Hamilton now going through for Mitchelton Scott. Behind him is Anderson from Team Sunweb in the black and white. Nicky Terpstra behind him. Kunde Kort, the large man in the black and yellow. Roger Kluge, the German. And a 300-metre gap now between our leaders and the peloton.
Well, it's a hard-won 300 metres gap for those riders out front, and they're racing for their teams to see what they can do about, well, closing down Mitchelton Scott. Mitchelton Scott have riders in there, so they're well represented and absolutely flying. They've come with a really well-balanced team, haven't they, so far? I wonder what they're like at Team Time Trial. We're going to find out tomorrow in the Hammer Chase. Mitchelton Scott with a 30-point advantage over Team Sunweb at the early stages, with BMC sitting in third place. As we scroll through the riders who've infiltrated this move, some useful riders in there, but as you've pointed out already, Robbie, no established A-grade sprinters.
No, and as time goes on in this race, I think it's less and less about how good a sprinter you are and just how resilient, how well you recover between these sprints and how well you can go with the constant attacks that are coming on that climb out of the city centre of Stavanger here. 30 kilometres left to race, so when they come through next time, they'll have another 3 laps to go, so 4 sprints yet to come.
Is that Lawless there for the, not 100% sure, but I think it might be for Team Sky. The young British rider's been a British circuit race champion, and that's the bread and butter of British professional racing indeed. They tend to be pretty good at this style of racing.
Well, Lawless, if he's going to score, they need this group to get across, but they are not looking like they're going to. There's too many riders marking this move who have teammates up the front, so this is that chase group between our breakaway and the peloton. But up the front, well, Team Sky have a representative in Leonardo Basso. Now another turn of pace coming from his teammate in that chase.
Is that the right play?
No.
Leonardo Basso is up there. He's doing his work. Do you actually try and drag a group of 8-10 guys across?
No, absolutely not. Not at the moment. Not with the numbers that were there. And at the moment, the advantage really for Mitchelton Scott, because they are now the only team with 2 riders in the front. And the chase group going through from the helicopter shot just now, passing the finish line, opposite side of the road. And the peloton really not far behind them. And a lot of looking around in that group. They're just marking each other because most riders in that counter-attack have a rider off the front in the break. But still Team Sky, they have Basso in front and Lawless still pushing on with this, trying to bring this group across.
It's an interesting decision. Maybe they just feel they can't back Leonardo Basso's sprint. It'd be nice to have more than one rider up there, given that that's the advantage that Mitchelton Scott has. You see Lars Bohm, his cheeks blowing as he tries to get across as well. He's got Antoine Tolhoek up there, and Tolhoek, for all that he has been a wonderful contributor to Team Lotto NL Jumbo's efforts so far this weekend, is not probably the guy that you would back in a sprint.
No, he's not the guy you'd back in a sprint, but certainly a fantastic contribution from the young Dutchman on terrain that's not really his favoured roads, but got himself off the front on that tough climb, and he leads them through that hairpin turn.
Yeah,
so you see them there, 8 riders in front.
8 riders in front, and Antoine Tolhoek has the dubious honour of leading them into the final kilometre and the run up through. They know exactly what they have as they run to the line as well. Looks like that chase group behind is about to be reabsorbed by what's left of the peloton. Plenty of non-finishers this afternoon. Plenty of riders who've been disregarded and dispensed with as they roll around at the back. Soren Krag here just trying to time this one, and we see Nicky Terpstra as well coming with a run from behind. Roger Kluge sitting 4th in line.
So you see Lucas Hamilton, he starts the lead out for Roger Kluge, and then Kunde Kort scrambling to get that wheel of the German from Mitchelton Scott. Nicky Terpstra getting onto the wheel of Kunde Kort. So they've picked Roger Kluge as the fast man in this group. And the deceiving thing about Kluge, he's really quite fast. He doesn't look like he's trying because he stays in the saddle most of the time. A really accomplished track rider. 200 metres to go now, out of the saddle to make that acceleration now, Kluge. And I think really he's just going to get wound up on time. Not
Roger
really
Kluge
his favourite type of sprint.
Roger Kluge is just about going to get there in time, or does he? It was nip and tuck, tough to call. We're going to go to the photo to see that one. Kluge just about holds off Tom Bowley from Leaky Terpstra, Countercore, Craig Anderson, Moscontolo, Hamilton and the rest behind. Well, it's a ragtag band of riders that are just trying to get themselves back into a situation where they can score up front. But those riders racing through, and I don't think they're 100% sure that they weren't actually sprinting for points there. Golas and Breschel were indeed, so let's give them due regard. The final two point scores in that run, and that's what's that done to the standings? Well, naturally Mitchell and Scott have stretched their advantage, now 110 points clear of Team Sunweb. Team BMC back into a handy third place. Team Sky, well, they finished yesterday in fourth, ahead of Quickstep Floors in fifth, and that's exactly the way things are standing at the moment. Let's get a look at this again. Kluge, he's deceptively fast.
Well, I said quite often he stays in the saddle, but the speed really quite low as they came into that sprint, so he had to get up, give it absolutely everything to try and get that big gear wound up. And for a while, it looked like Bowley was going to get to him. Kluge just able to ease through that final 10 metres or so. But really a battle on his hands here at the moment. So quite often, for a bunch sprint, things are really wound up, and Kluge will just stay in the saddle and wind it on through. Now really had to make that full acceleration, almost like a standing start, out of the seat and really get it wound. And now Bowley, the BMC rider, head between the shoulders. He is really suffering to stay in this group now. Gave it everything in the sprint. He's now paying the price.
Yeah, absolutely. Team BMC sitting third in the standings at the moment, and Tom Bowley, it's no lottery that he's up there. He has worked hard for his team, and they're scoring well with the selection of riders, and nice second place standings there for the BMC man. BMC with Tom Bowley. Damiano Caruso has been relatively quiet so far. Watch for him in the team time trial tomorrow in the Hammer Chase. Stefan Kung, Miles Scotts and Dylan Tuns has been scoring well as well for them as the peloton spreads wide across the road. The gap out to 19 seconds. EF Education first, frantic to try and do some decent scoring. It's been difficult for them, but Matty Breschel did manage to add a little bit to their haul, and the EF Education first squad, though, have slipped to 9th. Let's run through the order as Mitchell and Scott. It's now 110 points their advantage ahead of Team Sunweb. BMC sitting at a remove 155. Remember, we've still got a couple of sprints left. It's double points, so the issue still very much in doubt. There's the graphic representation of the standings as Mitchell and Scott still remain at the top of the standings. It's been a great couple of days racing for the Aussie squad. Sunweb in second, BMC 155 back. Team Sky, well, they're 276 points removed. It's going to be tough to get there into the lead, but maybe the podium is a decent option for the British squad. Quickstep, UAE, Lotto NL Jumbo, Trek Segafredo, EF Education first in 9th. Nippo Vini Fantini, Lotto Sudal, Israel Cycling Academy, Caja Rural and Aquablue Sport, the last two named, yet to score.
Well, one of the big name teams to miss out is Lotto Sudal. No one in that break. There's 7 teams represented in that 8-man break. UAE also missing the boat. So there's a few teams that should be interested in mounting a chase behind our lead group, the one we see here from the helicopter. In fact, no, this is the peloton.
Well, attack's coming out of it, and Baggioli looked like he was full of fight once more. He was up the road for quite a while. He's pushing on. Here we have the lead group, the gap down to 13 seconds, so it's looking a little bit tight now as to whether they're going to last or not. And Basso, Craig Anderson in front of him, playing a watching brief through the town. It's a little bit more technical, so they tend to be lined out. Terpstra on the front in the blue of Quickstep, scoring well, but Quickstep sitting 5th. Chase group, Picolas, Montfort and Baggioli, as I mentioned, the man on the front here in the blue with the orange flashes of the Nippo Vini Fantini. They've got some of the most colourful bikes in the peloton. You pick them out from space, wouldn't you? Maxime Montfort, 6th in the Vuelta a España back in 2011. It's a very different character of a bike race.
Very, very different, but you see what a difference that short, sharp hill here in Stavanger makes to this Hammer Sprint. So riders we saw very active yesterday in the Hammer Climb, like Baggioli, like Montfort, a Dolhook, they're really having an influence in the second part of this Hammer Sprint race. And it's up to the sprinters to really try and hang tough, use up what teammates they have left if, in fact, their team has missed this break. And I would think a team like UAE, for Alexander Kristoff, would like to have a good showing, get themselves back on terms, at least try and give everything they've got for that last double-point sprint on the final lap here, pick themselves up the order a little bit.
Plenty of ambition in that one and plenty of reason. Perhaps is there a sense that you keep your powder dry a little bit with a couple of sprints remaining and then save it for the big one?
Well, I think the key in this race is consistency. Just score constantly throughout and with different riders, everybody sharing the workload. We heard the EF Drapac team director, Charlie Wigalia, say it to his riders over race radio. Make sure you share the workload, everybody trying to do something, try and get some points. You've always got to be represented in these breakaways because if you have to chase, you've wasted precious resources that should be used in scoring points. They're about to hit the hill again.
Well, what's Michal Golash and Baggioli, who was climbing well yesterday, what are they going to have to get over to the group up front? The gap's showing down to 10 seconds. There's every chance that they're going to be able to get back in there. Should they do that, it's going to be a change of tactical dynamics because Team Sky are now going to have two riders. They just have the one up front, Leonardo Basso, with Golash there to assist. Could be a little bit of a change for Team Sky. Might help them up from that fourth position. But BMC, Sunweb and Mitchell and Scott would have something to say about that.
Well, it is looking like the peloton has lost some of its oomph as they come into these final couple of laps of the Hammer Sprint. And really difficult to chase anything down, and not many riders with a lot left in the legs. They're only short races. They are so very intense. And we heard yesterday some of the riders and their power outputs throughout the race. A rider like Tim de Klerk with an average power output of 391 watts for the 2 hours of racing yesterday. And today we've already seen early on Stefan Kung with an average power of 400 watts for an entire lap.
No problem.
And I would imagine the 2 laps before that were quite the same, if not even higher. So the intensity is undoubted in this Hammer Sprint. It's not all about the sprints. That's where the points are, but you've got to get yourself in contention, and that is what is so tough.
Well, you don't need live power stats courtesy of Velon to know that Baggioli's making an absolutely massive effort. Looks like one of his two of his teammates are also minded to try and jog across to that group. The gap back out to 17 seconds. It is, of course, Gianni Moscon up front for Team Sky, who's scoring well. Shortly is he to be joined by his teammate Michal Golash, the Polish rider. Well, remains to be seen. Antoine Tolok, though, no mistaking the diminutive figure of the Team Lotto NL Jumbo rider. He's continuing to contribute, continuing to add points on behalf of the Dutch squad. They're handily placed at the moment. They'll need to try and step on a little bit to move up from the current 7th place position. Mitchell and Scott now with that 110-point advantage. 3 sprints left. We're on lap 8 of 10 in the Hammer Sprint. With Baggioli, the diminutive Italian rider, with the Nippo Vini Fantini squad in the company of Belgian veteran. With the Lotto Soudal squad, Maxime Montfort. Michal Golash as well in there, and Antoine Tolok has a little look across as if to say, sure, they're getting the full effort here. And these riders, I think, are getting a little bit of encouragement because those riders are starting to look a little bit bigger.
Well, they're slowly but surely edging their way across the gap, showing 12 seconds at the moment. And just look at the intensity of effort from Maxime Montfort, rocking and rolling all over the bike, the Belgian. Or a climbing specialist and a domestique from the Hillier races. At the moment, his team's hoping he can get up there and get some points in the sprints to try and lift them out of their current 11th spot. They're 569 points behind the lead. And there's our graphic showing our leaders, Chase 1 and the peloton, and the gap between the front and the peloton growing all the time.
And across this little grippy section, so we've had the climb out of town and it continues to drag up a little bit. It doesn't take much, even 1 or 2%, and it's a real lung breaker, isn't it?
Well, it also is a headwind through this section. They're on the main road where our start-finish location is. So on this main road, they're riding back into the wind. So it's a slight drag up all the way to that big roundabout you can see from our helicopter shots. The elevated roundabout, there it is, going underneath those bridges across this main road. So back into that breeze, that headwind.
Kluge on the front for Mitchell and Scott. The tall and extremely impressive figure of Roger Kluge, who makes way for Conde Court in turn for Antoine Tolhoek in the yellow. Those three riders about to make the junction. Kluge knows it. So things are going to change a little bit with Lotto Soudal represented up front. Nippo Fantini will be delighted, currently sitting in 10th. Lotto Soudal 11th in the standings. They really need to do something, and they've done something. They're getting across at the death, and so too our Team Sky with a second rider, Michal Golash, to assist their rider, Gianni Moscon, up front.
Well, you know what the really cruel part of this next part of the race is going to be? We've now got 11 riders in front, and there's only points down for the top 10. Oh. Someone's going to miss out.
Who's going to win that lottery?
Well, possibly one of the teammates like Lucas Hamilton trying to lead out Roger Kluge. He'll be the man who misses out, quite possibly. And at the moment, they're all just starting to look at each other a little bit and starting to posture before they're coming up to that hairpin turn that will lead them on to this final kilometre for the sprint.
Well, of course, the team directors in the car will have these images, and they'll understand tactically exactly what the dynamics are and how they have shifted since the arrival of those three new riders. So the instructions will be coming from the team car. This is okay. We play this one.
Well, they're non-sprinters who have come across. They're guys who performed quite well yesterday on the Hammer climb, but not noted sprinters or fast men. So I'd say Roger Kluge, he's still the favourite in this group to take top points. And I think you'll see the likes of Conde Court, Nicky Terpstra and Bowley trying to take the wheel of Roger Kluge. And Kluge may be thinking, I don't want to do a long lead out. I'm going to try and ride the slipstream and come out over the top, because a really big effort. And we saw Tom Bowley after the last sprint really paying for that effort. So maybe a shorter effort wanted by Roger Kluge this time. You see him towards the back of the group, and he's on the wheel of Nicky Terpstra.
So he's going to play it slightly differently as Antoine Tolhoek takes them for a little dance across the road and back. And Tolhoek, I think, is going to try and... Well, I think he probably thinks his only chance of scoring big here is to surprise the group, and that's just not going to happen. Sky have two riders in there. They've got opportunities to burn. Pagioli in third place, so he's emptied himself to get across as Hamilton shaped to go. And this one is going to be a pretty slow build-up, slow burner, this sprint. Moscon coming on the right-hand side, looks to try and time it for Team Sky. Bowley coming on the left as well, but leading it out. Cragg is going to dance towards the line. Kluge waiting to pounce. Roger Kluge for Mitchell and Scott. Is he going to give them another top ball? I think it's Cragg that's going to get it. Kluge is going to be satisfied with second, Moscon in third, and no one really laying out maximum watts there because they'd like to stay out front for a little while longer.
Well, they're backing themselves to stay out for longer and take the next sprints on offer, and Roger Kluge deciding he needs to save his legs a little bit, so not fight overly hard for that top position, although giving some points back to Team Sunweb.
So Mitchell and Scott have extended their advantage despite only finishing second there to Team Sunweb's 119 point advantage. BMC still sitting in third. Team Sky holding steady in fourth, ahead of Quickstep, UAE, Team Emirates, Team Lotto, NL Jumbo, and the rest. Above Fantini, Trek, EF Education first, and the rest through as the peloton in one long stringing line through the UAE, while Alexander Kristoff has scored, but it's the UAE squad who are suffering a little bit because they're not represented in this move. They're currently sitting sixth, but I think they could be a little bit vulnerable here.
Well, we see that sprint again, the replay. Roger Kluge really just easing through into second in the wheel of Anderson. And importantly for Mitchell and Scott, Lucas Hamilton, he came through in seventh position. He's also taking 28 points. So Anderson making the big effort, and Roger Kluge just cruising through in the slipstream. Also Moscon taking some handy points for Team Sky. Tom Bowley, he really had a go, but was not as quick as the last time through. And this is now Terpstra who's gone on the attack. And we know from the classics and watching Nicky Terpstra, if he gets a few metres, it's good night, Irene. You often don't see him back. So they'll have to get onto this one really quickly. And he's been marked straight away by, it looks like, Lucas Hamilton.
Well, inevitably,
and
the two teams that have two riders in there are just going to mark everything, aren't they? It's automatic, it's instinctive, and they've put three riders up the road, and they've got teammates behind who are going to watch it. Terpstra is just going to play a little watching brief for a moment, see whether this one is worth backing, but it could be an interesting development here as the group up front splits into the final 10 miles of racing, just over 16 kilometers. It has been all action right from the start. Groups chasing off the front, coming back into the fray after taking a haul of points, and then back into a new group out front, reforming. Well, there's been hardly a moment to draw breath, certainly not for the riders out there, and Nicky Terpstra is a hell of an engine to have out front.
And that gap just starting to grow now. 7 seconds, Terpstra away from off the front, trying to get Moscon to do his share of the work. And behind, just little attacks coming. Riders trying to get across but being marked. And that gap just hovering around the same 7, 8 seconds. And I wonder if the peloton will start to shoot into action with just 2 sprints remaining.
Yeah, the second of those double points, remember. Tolhoek had a little look with the idea perhaps of riding off the front to try and chase down the Tour of Flanders winner Nicky Terpstra and his 2 breakaway companions, and then thought the better of it. And you wonder where the impetus and the legs are to try and close that gap down. Well, Søren Kragh really has been absolutely flying. Gianni Moscon's a fine classics rider himself, and he'll ride in the wheels. Baggioli, Kluge next up, and those riders with plenty. So we've got Nicky Terpstra up front, Golash and Hamilton. The blue of Team Quickstep represented out front by the former Dutch national road race champion and all-round champion of the classics, Nicky Terpstra. Antoine Tolhoek, the diminutive figure of the young rider from the Netherlands, Team Lotto NL Jumbo. What a super job he's done. What a super contribution he's made through the first couple of days. Made a lot of friends, hasn't he, in this style of racing. I wouldn't like to decide on behalf of the Team Lotto NL Jumbo squad, but I wouldn't be surprised if they rest him for the team time trial tomorrow. And mind you, with legs like that, why would you? Because he's straight into the counter, try and just clip across, and that is going to ignite these riders and put them back into action.
Now, following the move of Koen Kort. By the looks of things there, the Dutchman from Team Trek Segafredo in the red. And they have joined now our 3 leaders who didn't really seem intent on staying away. I think particularly Lucas Hamilton, having Roger Kluge there in the group, really doesn't want to leave him behind. Wants to keep him up the front.
So Hamilton doesn't want to go toe-to-toe with the likes of Nicky Terpstra. He'd prefer Roger Kluge to do it for him.
Exactly. They've got the fastest man in the group, so you've got to use that to your advantage. So Hamilton, perfect team play, going with the move, just making sure he's got it marked and he's there, but really not contributing along with Nicky Terpstra. But Nicky Terpstra is so canny. I don't think he's played his last card yet.
Well, has Koen Kort played his last card? He's got a minor advantage, and Maxime Montfort has spotted the danger of that one just as the group put itself back together again. Then there's another attack, and that is the professional way, and it's such impressive stuff from Koen Kort that he has the legs to manage it. Daniel Pearson here at the back of the group. What can Aqua Blue Sport do about scoring at the penultimate time of asking? Around by the port area in Stavanger this afternoon. Been hardly a moment to take in the sights.
Well, one sight I'm sure they're sick of by now is this hill they're just hitting again. This steep pinch that brings them up and out of the city, back towards the main road where our finish line is located. And it has really blown up a number of riders today. We've seen attacks and counter-attacks. But one thing is certain, each and every lap has been slower than the last.
Right, so it just becomes a real bind, a real grind, and these riders are really starting to suffer now. They've been out there for a long time. It's been super work. It's a relatively short bike race, but that is a lot of times up the one hill, isn't it?
Yes.
And it's pretty steep. I mean, the camera really doesn't do it justice. A little gripper, and the only man in this group that really does enjoy this part of the lap is Antoine Tolhoek. He just jogs to the front, and he's suffering, you can be sure of it, but he just finds it easier to just ease his way to the front, or perhaps even off the front, and he's putting it up to Maxime Montfort, who's, as you've pointed out, is a climber. This really isn't alpine climbing style, it's not Pyrenean climbing, but for all that, Maxime Montfort's steadily into the wheel of Antoine Tolhoek. Roger Kluge, altogether a bigger man, manages to make his way into the wheel as well. Baggioli has jumped across to this group. honouring the Nippo Vini Fantini jersey, the pro-continental level squad. Here comes the attack, and Terpstra is just dying to get clear, isn't he? He's just looking for any opportunity, and Hamilton's alive to the danger once more.
Well, I said Nicky Terpstra definitely hadn't played his last card. If it doesn't work out, he'll find another way, go on the attack again. And he knows he's up against it, against the likes of Roger Kluge and probably Anderson as well, and maybe even Bowley got his measure in the sprint. So he's trying to get himself away from those guys, putting in a solid attack, but fairly well marked again by Lucas Hamilton.
Peloton absolutely strung out, so they're far from giving up. It'll be interesting to know exactly what the gap is at the moment and whether all these attacks and stalls in the front group have had any negative effect on their advantage.
Well, there's surely teams who've been told to ride back here in the peloton. Team Education First are not represented up in the front. A couple of other teams also not there. Team UAE, as we mentioned, for Alexander Kristoff. So I'm sure they'll be making work of trying to narrow down this gap and pull this breakaway back into the fold so they can also score some points. Team UAE sitting in 6th at the moment on the points table, so it's really in their interest to get this group back, or they will drop some places to the likes of Team Lotto NL Jumbo, probably even Trek Segafredo if they don't get a move on and start scoring again soon.
Golash a little bit nervous, I think, about the lack of impetus in the lead group just at that moment. Kluge as well is having a little look around, and you just sense in recent times that it hasn't been quite as fast as it might be, and Golash is minded to have another go. Moscon is notable by his absence in there, actually. Let me just make sure he is absolutely in there. Was quite a while ago, but has Moscon been distanced? Try and pick him up again very shortly. Pearson continuing to play a watching brief at the back of a considerably reduced peloton. These riders, well, many of them will be just hoping and praying that the finish line comes while they're still in the bunch, because a lot of riders are suffering.
Well, it has been a tough afternoon, only short racing, but the intensity is what does the damage. And this is our front group. Roger Kluge here, number 25. He's been the man with the speed when it counts. And you look at that last sprint, the lap 8 sprint, Roger Kluge, and the 230 metres that they sprinted, an average of 1,100 watts. And the peak power is one thing around the 1,600, but 1,100 average over that 230 metres.
Imagine you're Caleb Ewan coming off that lead out. Really amazing stuff. Fantastic information that we're receiving from the power meters of the riders out on the road. Nicky Terpstra is going to ride them up towards the line, and it's the penultimate sprint of the afternoon for these riders. They're surely going to hang on to their advantage through towards that. Two riders still in there for Mitchell and Scott, just one from Team Sky. Mikael Golash is the sole representative up front. Gianni Moscon has been left to his own devices. Antoine Tolhoek takes a well-deserved drink. Kluge rolling through on the front, and inside, well, just outside the final 10 kilometres. Looking really good now for Mitchell and Scott. They've got two riders up front. They've got a gap of 119 points, but mathematically, it's still very much possible that they can be caught, so they need to remain ever vigilant.
Yep, they need to keep pushing on like they did yesterday, Michael Albacini. And here's just a little move. Lucas Hamilton, so he's seeing if he can sneak away and take some major points, take a bit of pressure off Kluge, but also would effectively seal the deal. If Lucas Hamilton could get away and get the win, and Roger Kluge then back it up with a second, I would think they would be going in with a very relaxed position into that final sprint. Here comes Hamilton approaching that hairpin turn, so he is looking really good to give them the slip and take major points this time. Or will someone sacrifice themselves, because there's no other duos here. Maxime Montfort, it's not in his interest to catch Lucas Hamilton, so they hesitate in the back. Hamilton has gotten away. This is a perfect situation for Mitchell and Scott, and Kluge now can just surf the wheels in, ride the slipstream, take some other good points, and really open up their lead over everybody on this, the second last sprint.
Lucas Hamilton has gone for the line. He's stretched his legs and he's stretched clear of the lead group. The bunch behind are anonymous figures in the penultimate haul of points this afternoon. The young Australian Lucas Hamilton has distanced himself, won the Tour of Alsace in 2017. He's just 22 years of age. He's up with the big show, Mitchell and Scott. And now behind, we look out to see where Roger Kluge is, as Antoine Tolhoek has decided to pull a fast one. He's just about clipped away. It would be a decent effort for the Lotto NL Jumbo man, but it's Lucas Hamilton, another young rider, indeed younger indeed he is, and he's going to take the 100 points on offer. Sprint behind, winding up with Baggioli looking to ambush the group as well, and now Kluge launches, but he's not going to be for second place. Hamilton, though, will take top points. At the second last time I'm asking, Antoine Tolhoek survives for a nice chunk for Team Lotto NL Jumbo. Baggioli almost bested on the line. A nice little blanket finish for Kluge and Terpstra ahead of Golas, Montfort and Cohn de Court. The bunch, well, they're quite a way out of it at the moment.
Oh, they're right out of it, and I don't expect to see the peloton come back and contest this double points sprint, and this is behind the winner of that sprint. This is Kluge on the front, Terpstra looming on the left. As they hit the line, Kluge was holding off Terpstra, but it was Baggioli who slipped away to take third there. This is for the final couple of points. Fabio Jakobsen coming through, and Christopher Lawless of Team Sky. They take 9th and 10th. They get the bell to the final lap of the Hammer Sprint.
So here's the situation going to the final sprint. Well, it is a gap of 272 points, so still mathematically possible for Team Sunweb to get up and deny Mitchell and Scott. But with two riders up front, that's surely not going to happen. And indeed, Lucas Hamilton's not going to hang around and wait for the rest of them to come up to him. He's got to see, can he make it as easy as possible for Roger Kluge at the back end, and perhaps even survive through to take that 200 points on offer himself. Lucas Hamilton stretching his legs clear. He scored well, and now it is the Mitchell and Scott squad that lead into the final lap ahead of Team Sunweb. BMC Racing Team sitting in third. Team Sky, Quick Step Floors, well, there's been no change in second, third, fourth and fifth lately. Team Lotto NL Jumbo as well have moved a little bit closer to a podium position, but still sit in sixth.
Well, a very handy gap now for Hamilton, and quite like yesterday on the Hammer Climb, a very different course today, but a similar scenario. Lucas Hamilton came through yesterday in that final couple of laps and really made a handy contribution to the Mitchelton Scott points total. You're doing the same today in the Hammer Sprint, a place where you may not expect the young climber, but this course cannot be underestimated. That little sharp climb has really done the damage coming out of the town. And there's the gap. Lucas Hamilton riding off into the distance, and the rest of them quite content at the moment just to look at each other and look like they may well be sprinting it out for second points. Montfort is leading them through at the moment, followed by Nicky Terpstra, Baggioli and Roger Kluge. He is the policeman for that breakaway of his teammate Hamilton off the front.
Golesh on the back, hashtag Hammer Series if you want to get involved in the conversation. Let us know if you think that whether Lucas Hamilton is going to hang on to this 13-second advantage. Nicky Terpstra is getting the word in his ear that if you're going to score top points at the back end and you're going to make it onto the podium, you're going to have to score the big ones. And Terpstra is making the effort to try and get across to this man, Lucas Hamilton, the young Australian rider who is going to rubber stamp Mitchell and Scott's dominance. And victory, should it go to them in this, will mean that they win the Hammer Sprint, of course, and they'll go through with the maximum advantage into the Hammer Chase. But the overall destination of honours in Hammer Stavanger is on the first team across the line at the conclusion of tomorrow's Hammer Chase. So this is accruing a lead position on the road, and that's what they're going towards. At the moment, it looks like they're going to be the first of Group 2 to head out into action in tomorrow's Hammer Chase. And Hamilton looks like he's going to give them a big contribution, a mere 490 watts just for a moment there. It's a solid effort, up around 400 watts for Hamilton as he steals a little look around, sweeps through the bend.
And behind him, well, the impetus going out of this group. As you said, Kluge is the one just sitting middle of the group, not getting in the way, but definitely not contributing. And there's a few other riders here in the group, like Golesh. He's not prepared to go and do any work on the front. It's been mostly Terpstra and Montfort and Tolhoek doing the chasing. But it looks like the march has been stolen by the young Aussie, Lucas Hamilton. The gap, 17 seconds. He comes into the city centre, just under 6 kilometres to go. And it's looking like it's a done deal for Mitchelton Scott.
Well, we're going to find out very shortly whether Lucas Hamilton can survive or not. His experience on this hill to come will be instructive. At the final time of asking, the Mitchelton Scott rider is going to lead the race, the Hammer Sprint, up onto this difficult climb, 800 meters, just over 5%. Roger Kluge behind is tapping through, but there's no contribution there. He's just glass cranking it through. If anything, it's his situation there in the line is a confusion to the others.
Well, if Roger Kluge goes to the front, it's more dropping the speed than mounting a chase. And he's very happy to have his teammate off the front. A great move, and a sneaky little move by Lucas Hamilton last time through to take those maximum points. And then the doubt in the minds of the rest of the group, who should do the chasing behind him, and he was gone. And once he got through, he's decided to go right on with it and try and take these double points on the final sprint as he comes along the waterfront here in Stavanger. He's about to hit that climb. 20 seconds the advantage.
Where was it? Interesting that Gianni Moscon dropped away from the group. It changed the tactical dynamic a little bit and put the advantage back to Mitchell and Scott. Just two riders in the move. Well, that's the only group and only team that had more than one rider in there. They've been playing their tactical advantage. Tallhook, though, he loves this climb and he wants to race clear. Who's going to cover it? Inevitably, it is that mountain goat, Roger Kluge, that is going to race onto the tail of Antoine Tallhook. Up front, Lucas Hamilton with a 22-second lead as this gradient starts to grip. Doesn't look like he's in it, but I can tell you he's suffering right now. He knows that and he just goes onto the small ring, and suddenly his cadence absolutely shoots up. Lucas Hamilton cheered on to glory, perhaps. Another 200 points on offer for the young Aussie.
Well, the difference quite small between Quick Step Floors and Team Lotto NL Jumbo. So Tallhook, he would need to get away from Nicky Terpstra. But you see at the moment, Tallhook on the front, in his wheel, Nicky Terpstra. He's not letting him go anywhere. So not so much chasing Hamilton at the moment. The gap did come down with that short attack by Tallhook. Now back out to 17 seconds. Nicky Terpstra leads them through at the moment. But this man, Lucas Hamilton, he is holding that gap, keeping that tempo steady. No wild accelerations from him. So you may see the gap fluctuate as attacks come from behind, trying to go across. But he'll just keep tapping out this rhythm and try to get all the way around to the line to take those double points. This is back in the peloton, these attacks.
Hamilton, 430 watts for his attack for the lap that he attacked on, so a reasonable contribution as well, given he's been out front all afternoon. As behind PMC want to try and put a rider up the road. Is it conceivable that they can get back up to that group behind? They're starting to ride a little bit behind Lucas Hamilton. Hamilton is keeping them honest. Behind, though, well, it's riders all over the bike in their effort to try and drag themselves clear of the bunch. Everybody's pretty much out on their ear at this moment. We're down to the final 4 kilometers. Lucas Hamilton into the familiar crouch, trying to time trial it through to the finish. Will he be involved in the team time trial that is the Hammer Chase tomorrow? Well, the teams have yet to decide on their lineups. They have up until 12 o'clock tomorrow to make that decision, so they can leave it as late as possible. There's plenty of riders will be putting their hands up after these. A few others won't be quite so quick to put their hand up, because this has been a bruising encounter in the sunshine, beneath the sunshine indeed, in Norway this afternoon in Stavanger. Lucas Hamilton with brief respite as he freewheels through this right-hander and out of the technical section of this course. Now it'll start to grip ever so slightly and head into that headwind towards the finishing.
Yeah, it's a long 3 kilometres for Lucas Hamilton, and we see that gap being given to the first chaser of 11 seconds. So has there been an acceleration by one rider, or is the group coming closer? This is the peloton we see coming through. So I'm getting the impression that possibly the peloton has made a big acceleration and have come back to our leading group.
Do you know what? I think you're absolutely right. I caught Terpstra a little earlier on. Wasn't sure it was him, but I think it was he that was trying to stay up front, having the group having been caught. So we've had a complete change in the situation, and those riders just didn't ride hard enough. Looks like the peloton have got back into position, and that's why the gap is coming down at a rate of knots, and Lucas Hamilton will do well to hang on through the final 2,600 metres.
Well, it's Team Sky and UAE have been doing the bulk of the work, obviously, in the background, and we see Alexander Kristoff in 3rd position in the white, the European champion jersey. They're mopping up Damiano Caruso of BMC. So here comes the charge, and they will see Lucas Hamilton in the distance. This is Olivero Troia Or is it Bistrom leading?
Yeah, it would make
Alexander
sense if
Kristoff?
Bistrom was doing that, wouldn't it? Because he will empty himself for his fellow countrymen as Alexander Kristoff's going to suffer for this one, and he knows the value of it, and he knows that if they do manage that 200-point score and perhaps a few other points as well, the team UAE, Team Emirates could well vault from 7th above Team Lotto and El Jumbo into 6th, or perhaps even above them again into, ahead of Team Quickstep Floors into 5th. So Fabio Jakobsen will be ever mindful. Meanwhile, the gap to Lucas Hamilton is down to 8 seconds. Everyone is tired here now. Really, everyone is suffering, but Lucas Hamilton is doing a fantastic job. Can he possibly hang on for this one?
Flick of the elbow there from Bistrom, so he is empty. The gap at 7 seconds. He's the only one doing the work. This bunch is going to need someone else to come through if they're going to catch Lucas Hamilton, but now the attacks are starting to come. Riders getting a sniff of the double points on offer. Hamilton at 6 seconds, and a bit of disorganisation in the peloton. No team able to take the lead because this peloton has been decimated. There's Hamilton. They can see him. They've got him lined up. Can he survive?
Well, Lucas Hamilton has only one thing to do here. He's got to empty the tanks. He's flat shot down towards the final hairpin, down under the kite, or well, to the final kilometre marker, and then around the hairpin he'll have just over 800 metres of pain and suffering, and I'm not so sure he's going to be able to do it because that peloton are starting to get organised behind. You call this organised? Everybody just trying attacks left, right and centre, and that moment as Bistrom had to just throttle back, and there's no way that Kristoff could go to the front.
Well, he is not going to stay in front. That gap, 5 seconds, I would say it was more like 3 or 4 out of that hairpin. He sees them now, and he's given it up. He knows they're going to catch him. He's looking around to see if he's being backed up by a teammate. And can Daryl Impey make an impression? I did see Edward Toons up there for Team Sunweb. They'll be looking for big points to see if they can get up there with Anderson and Toons and Bauhaus. Effectively, it is possible to overhaul Mitchelton Scott.
Well, now into the final kilometre and into the final 500-600 metres, Lucas Hamilton tries to stay up there to the counter-attacker from the BMC squad, but it's going to be a traditional lead-out with Team Sunweb up front. Quickstep have riders in abundance. Breschel perhaps has got up there for EF Education first. Look at Alexander Kristoff, who's handily placed. Where is Daryl Impey? He's nicely placed as well. Jakobsen on the wheel of Alexander Kristoff. Kristoff that is going to launch off the wheel of Lotto Soudal and into the final 200 metres. The final sprint of the Hammer Sprint is underway. Bauhaus goes toe-to-toe with Alexander Kristoff. It's a match race for the final 200 points as Sunweb are packing well at the front. Kristoff is going to get there, or is he? Not so sure. Could well blanket finish. We wait for the Halverson, the local man. Christopher Halverson takes the top 200 ahead of Phil Bauhaus, Alexander Kristoff, Eddie Dunn's backing well for Team Sunweb, Grossu, Impey, Wouters, Kate, Jensen and Knox in what was a blanket finish, and that was a very hotly contested final haul of 200 points.
Well, watch Halverson. He swings out to the left now, comes very, very late. It was all Bauhaus towards the line, but Halverson with that final throw gets it for Team Sky, takes maximum points. So Team Sky, that gives him enough to climb up into third.
So the confirmation of the final overall standings of the Hammer Sprint, with Mitchell and Scott hanging on to and indeed extending their advantage through to the finish. And indeed it was a 73-point advantage over Team Sunweb, with Team Sky moving up into third ahead of BMC Racing Team at the death. BMC spent the whole afternoon in third, just pipped for the final podium spot by Team Sky. Quickstep in fifth. UAE Team Emirates moving up into sixth from seventh, so that was worth it from Kristoff, Nibovini Fantini, Lotto El Jumbo, Lotto Soudal, Trek Segafredo, EF Education first, Israel Cycling Academy, Aquablue Sports scoring points at the final sprint of the afternoon, but sitting in 13th ahead of the final position held by Carrel. Let's get another look at this sprint. Looked to all end up as if Phil Bauhaus had taken the final 200. Toons, though, nicely and handily placed for Team Sunweb, but it's Halverson coming with a late charge along the left-hand side of the road for Team Sky, who takes the 200. It's one Norwegian. Steps up to replace another. Well, we catch our breath after 10 laps of frenetic action. It's been flat-out stuff. Seems a long time since those early attacks, but Mitchell and Scott involved in pretty much everything. They have taken the Hammer Sprint out to their Hammer Climb title ahead of Team Sunweb, Team Sky, BMC, Quickstep, UE, Team Emirates and Nippo Vini Fantini in the top 7 positions of the 14 squads. Team Sky, the big winners in that final sprint. Team Lotto NL Jumbo slipping a bit in the final knockings ahead of Lotto Sudal, Trek Segafredo, EF Education First, Israel Cycling Academy, Aqua Blue Sports and Caja Rural, the final finishers. Well, hopefully we can catch up with Mitchell and Scott. The squad are being gathered and assembled and they're celebrating. They're celebrating down there. With plenty of claps on the back for those riders. Not least, I think, for Roger Kluge, for Darrell Impey as well. Out front for such a long period of that race. Lucas Hamilton as well. What a great job he did on behalf of Kluge and Mitchell and Scott away in that late race breakaway. And once again, well, let's catch up with the Mitchell and Scott squad now. Let's get a reminder of the wonderful performances from Darrell Impey out front in the early stages with Stefan Kung of Team BMC, managing to take the big 200 as well as hoovering up a couple of one-lap single 100-point scores. Well, Roger Kluge went out in that late race breakaway. There was nothing to touch him when he went toe-to-toe with the likes of Nicky Terpstra and Cône de Court. Lucas Hamilton provided a great stalking horse for the chasers behind and managed to take 100. No way he was going to survive through the final sprint, but all of those 5 riders contributing to a great effort for Mitchell and Scott. Double winners in Hammer Stavanger already. Everybody's going to be going to the pool after that one. I think there's a lot of riders certainly topped up their suntan. Everybody in Norway saying how unseasonably marvellous the weather has been. It's been sustained sunshine for the past week. Right down the southern tip of Norway. This is about as sunny part of Norway as it gets in actual fact. But just as the fjord land starts to sweep up on the western coast. Very much an oil town, this. Prosperity of the oil has dwindled a little bit, but still Norway's a very important region, a very important part of the country. We're in Rogaland County, boarding Hordaland. Fjords, beaches, islands, there's just such a contrast in topography around here. The final totting up, well, the abacus beads are flying at the moment as they work out exactly the situation and the scenario heading into the hammer chase tomorrow afternoon, as the accumulation of points will dictate the starting position for the teams. They ride on team time trial bikes, albeit with road helmets, and the advantages that they carry from today will be into tomorrow's hammer chase. They're working that out at the moment. What a day it has been, what a day of racing. Let's remind ourselves of the action. 10 full laps of a 9.2 kilometer circuit, and this is what it looked like. Flag came in, attacks right from the get-go. Nobody wanted to be left out of it. Eddie Toons getting up for the first sprint of the afternoon. Belgian sprinter, edging Grosso on the rest in that first sprint, and that was the character of the afternoon established from the first moments. Alexander Kristoff getting the local favourite, local fans indeed something to go home happy about. European road race champion, besting Fabio Jakobsen to scoop 100 points on the line. Darrell Impey going clear with Stefan Kung, Mitchell and Scott rider, the South African road race champion. Racing clear of the peloton, and it was perhaps the most productive breakaway of the day, of which there were numerous, to say the least. Søren Kragh was in flying form, as he was indeed in the climb. Søren Kragh Andersen, Danish rider with Team Sunweb, besting on that occasion. Nicky Terpstra, and then Roger Kluge showing his track skills and ability. to hold off the rest in their breakaway group, which sustained out front. Cohen de Court, no way could get on terms with Kluge on that occasion. Down to the bell, and it was Lucas Hamilton. It was his turn for Mitchell and Scott to just show what he was capable of, and looked for all the world as if he was going to survive through to take the final 200 on offer. In the end, it was a big bunch gallop to decide the final sprint of the day. Team Sunweb, UAE Team Emirates, courtesy of Christoph. But it was Halvorsen, Christopher Halvorsen, the Norwegian rider, who took the final 200 on offer on behalf of Team Sky and vaulting the British squad from third up into a position on the podium. Well, the cruisers have seen all they need to see of big-time bike racing, and they're heading off to the next venue. We've got some more bike racing for you tomorrow afternoon, the Hammer Chase, as I've mentioned. And I think Robbie's caught up with the Mitchell and Scott riders now. Let's see if we can head down and pick up with the Mitchell and Scott team now.
Roger Kluge, that looked hard on television. I'm assuming it was even harder out on the road. There was a lot of suffering going on out there.
Yeah, it was. Especially with a little climb. It was a sprint, but this climb makes it a little bit special. And I was racing on from the beginning, always breakaways away, and it wasn't an easy race, no.
And tactically quite difficult, and you had to really be astute and measure your efforts. We saw you take some sprints, take the win, but a couple of times just sit in the wheels and try and conserve.
Yeah, true. If you go once deep, you need to recover, and if you go second time deep, probably you risk to drop. So once, 2 times, just sit on a wheel. You have to take some easy points.
And Daryl Impey, we saw again how important it is for the whole team to contribute. You went out early, got some good points. You were out there with Stefan Kung, and a very tough ride out there with a time trial specialist like him.
Suffering on his wheel there, but I kind of regretted going after that sprint. But we knew we had to have some kind of get some kind of advantage over the sprinters here, so we went for the long shot, and yeah, we grabbed some valuable points there, so that was worth it.
And in front all day long, and quite like yesterday, Lucas Hamilton, you came through in the latter part of the race, and even in the final really went on the attack, taking out a sprint but continuing on and showing how important it is for the whole team to be up there and have multiple riders in a breakaway.
Yeah, exactly. I was actually pretty pinned at the start today, so it was good to sort of come good at the end and contribute to the points for the team. Yeah, I think in the final there we had me and Rog there, and I'm not going to win a sprint in a group like that, so it's good to have Rog there to come through and collect some points.
And Damien Howson, you told us yesterday that you had your sprinters' legs ready and you scored some valuable points again for the team, took the top spot. Now, you guys are going to be the chase tomorrow because you'll be heading out Group 2 in the Hammer Chase for the win in the Hammer Series.
Yeah, certainly. I think it was a real special day with the guys again. Probably didn't count ourselves as a favourite with the team that we got here for today, but certainly showed that as much as it's called the Hammer Sprint, it's not all about sprinting. It's certainly a tough race, and you need to have the legs to go on with it, and to be on the front foot like the guys did today is phenomenal effort, and we just go on with it tomorrow.
So a very tactical race and a very tough race, but tomorrow something a little bit more familiar for everyone, a team's time trial, start at the front and just don't get caught.
Yeah, exactly. Just take it like a normal time trial, pretend that it isn't a handicap situation, really focus on our own ride, and just have the finish line in sight and put the best ride we can forward.
Well, there you go. Declan, back to you. The best ride will come from all the teams out there tomorrow.
Certainly will. They haven't lost sight of the finish line so far, have they? And it's champagne time once more. They'll have the hang of this pretty quickly, won't they? The Mitchell and Scott squad celebrating for the second day in succession. Their quintet of riders. There's only 4 there at the moment, but Damien Howson, Lucas Hamilton, Daryl Impey, Roger Kluge, and Cam Meyer, who's had a tougher afternoon. Well, those 4 riders up front scoring well. And it's Daryl Impey that wins the race to get the cork unplugged. First time he's won a race so far this afternoon. I'll tell you what, not a drop of that wasted. So Mitchell and Scott celebrate, and they will have the maximum advantage tomorrow. They will be leading the field away, the others chasing them behind. And new rules I can tell you about the Hammer Chase in terms of drafting. They're going to be a strict enforcement of the drafting rules. It got a little bit chaotic in Hammer Limburg last year. Well, things are going to change tomorrow. They've got a new flag system in operation. If the commissars feel that you haven't left enough of a gap, well, you get a yellow flag. And you've got 30 seconds to get out of the way. And either way, even if you manage to go a bit quicker, it's going to be 2 minutes before you're allowed to even contemplate moving ahead of that team. And then again, if you get an orange flag, well, you got a 5-minute gap before you can get back up front, and you have to make sure you get out of the way in 30 seconds. Get a red flag, you're out of the race. So they've got this one worked out for tomorrow. It's going to be absolutely fascinating, and Damien Howson was absolutely right, I think, to say that they really do need to decide to ride their own race and stay, and not even think of it as a handicap, not imagine that there are other teams chasing them, just do their own team time trial. Question is, what legs have they got left? That's what's so marvelous about this particular format. You've got 3 different days of racing, 3 different characters of event, and you need a real all-round squad to do it. And well, tomorrow's course is something to have a look at. We're in Stavanger once more. Let's get a look at it now. A Hammer Chase gets underway here at the Forum on the outskirts of Stavanger. And out into the countryside through this, it's basically a big urban sprawl. Picks away around by the waterways, which predominate in this region. A little bit of grippiness, which is going to test and challenge the riders. It's substantially not particularly difficult in terms of topography. And the course designers have found a route that's not too technical either. So it's not going to be too much of a challenge for the riders on those team time trial bikes. But taking them out into the neighbouring towns, it's a long challenge for the riders. 10 miles, make that 16.2 kilometres. And a couple of laps to do. 3 laps in total, and virtually no ascents through that. So that's the Hammer Chase. That's what they have to think about tomorrow. 2 groups will be racing. Group 1 have the potential to win the day, but not the overall. They'll be racing for positions 8 through 14. And the second group on the road, well, they're racing for Hammer Stavanger honours overall. And the first team away will be the Mitchell and Scott squad. No doubt about that. They have won both the Hammer Climb and indeed the Hammer Chase. And there's the overall ranking, with Team Sunweb sitting in 2nd place through the first couple of days. Team Sky have vaulted up into 3rd as a result of that great sprinting. BMC, Quickstep, Lotto NL Jumbo, Nippo Vini Fantini have moved up into Group 1. So great effort from the Pro Continental outfit. UAE Team Emirates, Lotto Sudal, Trek Segafredo, Israel Cycling Academy, and the rest have an opportunity to go for the day. Hoping to catch up with the riders on the podium. It's Mitchelton Scots that are presented with their prizes.
The Hammer Climb.
Let's soak up the scene at the podium area here.
Ladies and gentlemen, give them a big cheer. Let's see those pulpit rocks to our Mitchelton Scott team winning the Hammer Sprints. And because they were the winners yesterday, and the winners
prizes are plenty for the Mitchell and Scott squad, but they won't have an opportunity to go partying tonight because they've got to go back into action again tomorrow.
The best apple juice in the world. It is Team Mitchelton Scots.
Roger Kluge gets to look after the apple juice.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
He's team captain and doling that out. Plenty of prizes, plenty of plaudits, great crowd. Really enjoyed some fantastic action here. Sun splitting the stones here in Stavanger.